Chapter 1160. Another year had passed and he had successfully thrown fireballs, earth balls, iron balls and water balls. He was only short of a wooden ball. However, it was to no avail. He still relied on his hands to throw. Now that he had developed a good throwing technique, few people below the cardinal heaven level couldn't miss. However, it was still useless. Today is Friday and it should be about time. Renming's land could allow humans to build a forward base there. There's one more thing. Ji Jingyanhui, someone wants to see you. Coming? Chao Wenji walked out of a small room, his bulging muscles covered in sweat. Chao Wenji was the stubborn young man who was accepted into the martial arts center by Ren Baqian. He always had a dream, and the scene in his dream was very similar to the war that the human race was forced into the barren land by another world. As a result, Ren Baqian had some guesses about his origin and had been paying close attention to him all these years. If there were no accidents, he would be brought back to Dayo in a few years. However, he was still too weak at the intermediate level of the Earth Wheel level. Although he was already very strong on Earth, he was only equivalent to the winged cavalry in Dayo and couldn't pass through the barrier between the two worlds. The people there were all elites and no one would take care of him. Instead, he would be a burden to others. Furthermore, training required time. Even if he was brought back to Dayo, it would take a long time before he could be of use. One advantage of Earth was that the timeline was different, but the vitality there was scarce. Fortunately, vitality was important before the Earth embryo realm, but it wasn't decisive. It mainly depended on food and blood to transform. The existence of the Horn Dragon Galaxy happened to make up for this. The timeline there was also different. Layman and Ji asked hesitantly. Since it was impossible to reach the Earth embryo realm on Earth, how could his wife be so strong? It's equivalent to opening up the sky and Earth. Although Renji was slightly impulsive and extremely stubborn, he was very determined to practice martial arts. He then encouraged them again and said, "That's a good place to go, and the disciples of my martial arts center will naturally go there in the future. Both of you are the best among the disciples in terms of talent and temperament, which is why I chose you this time." "We will do our best," they immediately said. Ren Baqian nodded slightly and took out 2 booklets from his bag. "I don't know how long you'll be gone this time. This is about the Earth embryo realm and the Heaven Gate." "Thank you, Master. Your duty this time is to be on guard. You need to be careful if anything happens and focus on your own safety. Remember, strength is everything." "Understood." Push a Book of God Beyond the Universe, a new book by a 10,000 subscribed big shot. New by Chinese website. Chapter 1161. After an unknown period of time, Chao Wenji woke up from the long darkness. There were many sounds coming from the outside world. It was the sound of the sleeping cabin door opening. Chao Wenji got down from the reclining chair. His legs were weak and he couldn't exert any strength. However, with the strong physical fitness of an earth wheel expert, it didn't affect his walking. This was an inevitable reaction after a long period of hibernation. He only needed 2 to 3 days to recover. This was known from the handbook that was distributed previously. Are we almost there? Chao Wenji had this thought, and an impatient emotion arose in his heart. The first space voyage wasn't pleasant. After experiencing the excitement of leaving Earth, everyone quickly fell into boredom. Every day, everyone saw the dark starry sky and the distant stars, which seemed to remain the same throughout the years. After 3 days, except for a small number of people, most of them entered hibernation and relied on the computerized intravenous infusion of nutrients to maintain their vital signs. The feeling of having their lives in the hands of others was equally terrible. Fortunately, such days were finally over. He took a step forward, and the door of the sleeping cabin opened automatically. There were very few footsteps in the surroundings. "Those who have woken up, please proceed to the hall. Those who have woken up, please proceed to the hall." The voice of the staff on the airship kept coming out. It was better to change that broken voice to a softer, electronically synthesized voice. When he came out of the cabin door, he saw Xiang Yang walking out not far away. "How do you feel?" A gentle and steady voice sounded from the side. It was Jing Yanhui, who had woken up earlier than Ren Baqian. "Not bad." Chao Wenji shifted his gaze away from Xiang Yang and looked around. Besides Jing Yanhui, there were a few other people who had come out. They were all high-level earth wheel experts from the military. The stronger one was, the faster he would wake up. Those foreigners who relied on mechanical skeletons still needed some time to wake up. Furthermore, it would take a longer time for them to move freely. There were only a few people in the hall. "Good morning, gentlemen." Would you like a cup of warm water? A lady asked after examining Chao Wenji's body. He was a robot. He looked no different from a human, and his movements weren't stiff at all. Chao Wenji knew that he needed a cup of water to restore some of his gastrointestinal function. He sat on the sofa and sipped the warm water. He could see the outside world through the projection on the surrounding walls. The boundless universe, an unfamiliar starry sky, and 2 blue-green planets in the distance. Not long after, the hall became lively. Among them, the earth wheel experts from China were naturally in the best condition, followed by those from the Japanese. Their familiarity with and knowledge of China's culture gave them an advantage in learning many martial arts techniques compared to people from other countries. As for the people from other countries, apart from a few Chinese and a few Caucasians, most of them were lucky to be able to walk. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone had just woken up from hibernation, and they must have felt as if they had been given a new lease on life. Everyone can look at the projection on the wall. We have already arrived at the Horned Dragon Galaxy. Rejoice, gentlemen and ladies. We have taken the most important step for humanity. The era of space exploration will be opened by us. The one giving the speech was the vice captain, who was said to be in charge of political work in the army. Chao Wenji wasn't very interested in what he was talking about. He looked at the 2 planets on the projection with some anticipation. Although he was looking forward to improving his strength, he was only at the intermediate stage of the Earth wheel. He didn't have the same urgency as Jing Yanhui, who was always stuck at a bottleneck. He was also very interested in extraterrestrial planets. There was still half a month before they arrived at the 4-leaf grass planet. He didn't know who came up with the name. It was probably because the continents on the planet looked a little like 4-leaf clovers. During this half a month, everyone had to adjust their physical condition to the best to deal with the various dangers that might appear on the extraterrestrial planet. From the previous information, everyone already knew that the danger of ordinary life on this planet was only slightly greater than that of life on Earth. However, some individuals were extremely dangerous. Fortunately, they were landing on a continent without extraterrestrial civilization. At the very least, they didn't have to face the aliens at the beginning. They only had to face the dangers brought by wild beasts. 3 days later, Chao Wenji received the latest information on the extraterrestrial planet from the exploration spacecraft that had stopped here previously. Looking at the ravines on the ground caused by the battle between the 2 huge beasts and the completely destroyed forest, everyone had a further understanding of the power and danger of the opposite sex. 13 days later. In a palace on the 4-leaf grass planet, a 2-horned thunder barbarian who was more than 2.5 meters tall, appeared hundreds of meters in the air in a flash and looked into the distance with a deep gaze. After a few breaths, a female thunder barbarian stood beside him and asked, "King, what happened? It seems that something is coming." The tall thunder barbarian said in a deep voice. "What?" The female thunder barbarian was puzzled. The tall thunder barbarian sensed carefully. After a while, he returned to the palace with some doubts and ordered, "Someone go to the east to investigate. I feel that something is going in that direction." At the same time, some people also sensed something. However, they didn't know what happened. No one would have thought that an extraterrestrial visitor would come to this world just now. After a series of roars and violent tremors, the 2 spaceships landed on a huge plain more than 10 kilometers away from each other, scaring away countless birds and beasts. After the spaceship landed, a few small detection instruments protruded from one side to detect the environment of this planet. Then, 4 unmanned reconnaissance drones ejected from the spaceship to investigate the surrounding situation. As the information was gathered, Chao Wenji also received new information. The gravity was slightly higher than on Earth, and the oxygen content in the air was slightly higher. Apart from that, a few gases that did not exist on Earth were detected in the air, but they did not have much effect on the human body. In other words, humans could come into contact with the air of this world without any protection. The day of this world was 24 hours and the night was 16 hours. When everyone arrived on this planet, it could only be considered noon. After 3 hours, the side door of the spaceship opened, and 2 exploration team members walked out of the enclosed cabin. After the 2 exploration team members entered the enclosed cabin, the connection between the enclosed cabin and the spaceship was closed. It was the first time that humans had set foot on an alien planet with life, so they could not be too cautious. 10 minutes later, the 2 of them returned. After an hour, another 5 people came out of the spaceship. Chao Wenji was one of them. From head to toe, the camouflage leather protective suit was actually made of synthetic materials. When attacked, it could reduce the cushioning effect. It also had excellent protection against sharp blades, and it also had a certain degree of resistance against hot and cold temperatures. The only drawback was that it was not very good for ventilation. This is the four-leaf grass planet. When Chao Wenji came out of the cabin, he could smell the fresh air. The fragrance of flowers, grass, and other smells were mixed in. It was far more comfortable than the air on Earth. He moved his hands and feet. The gravity was the same as what he knew before. It was slightly higher than Earth, about 1-2 times. It was not a burden to him. He turned his head and looked around. At the end of his vision was an endless plain. Large yellow flowers swayed in the wind. Countless yellow petals rose with the wind. Unknown bugs wandered in the air. Chao Wenji avoided a few bugs. No one knew if these bugs from the alien planet were harmful to humans. Perhaps ordinary substances to them could be a fatal threat to humans. All of this was recorded in the handbook, and everyone had memorized it from beginning to end. He turned his head and looked around. Like him, the others were observing the surroundings and familiarizing themselves with the environment. However, at this moment, Chao Wenji's eyes narrowed. He felt something moving underground. He didn't feel any danger. That thing wasn't coming for him. "Be careful, there's something underground," Chao Wenji shouted. Following his words, a white man not far away suddenly let out a scream. A creature that looked like a hairtail or an eel suddenly rushed out of the soil, bit off one of his legs, swung its tail, and drilled into the soil again. The soil below was like water to it. Chao Wenji's expression changed, and a knife appeared in his hand. "There's more underground. Go back," a man not far away shouted. This man was an expert from the military and had the strength of an advanced earthwheel expert. One of the soldiers wanted to drag the screaming white man back, but someone immediately shouted, "Don't come near." Following this voice, fish-like monsters jumped out of the ground, took a piece of flesh from the man's body and disappeared. There were at least dozens of these monsters. In the blink of an eye, the man was dead. Chao Wenji seized the opportunity to attack. He cut off a few monsters and carefully avoided the bright red blood that sprayed out. Then he slowly returned to the slanted platform under the cabin. The creatures on this planet were more unfriendly than expected. P.S. I'm recommending a friend's book, Heaven's Spoiler Group, which was just published today. The first subscription has already exceeded 10,000, so you can read it without worry. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second. Remember, booksellers. Chapter 1162. Over the next few months, humans slowly gained a foothold on this strange planet. Gaining a foothold referred to the establishment of a small outpost. The strange fish that Rinpoche saw the other day weren't considered powerful, and there weren't many of them either. However, they were very fast and had very sharp teeth. There were many small holes in the bushes in the areas where they were frequently seen. These holes were covered with mucus and were easy to spot and identify. As long as one paid attention to this, they would be able to avoid them. In fact, they rarely left the area where they were often active. Furthermore, with the use of vibration conductors, they could directly collapse their nest and the holes in the ground. Even if they could move in the mud, their speed would be greatly reduced. Previously, the spacecraft just happened to land on top of their nest, which led to the subsequent events. Fortunately, with the assistance of numerous technological equipment, humans finally built a small outpost in this area. It was a small village with dozens of model houses. The ground was paved with steel, and the surrounding area was surrounded by 3-meter-tall solid walls. It looked like concrete, but in fact it was a type of expansion material. It was only the size of a Coke bottle, and after it was released and shaped, it was at least half a meter square. Its hardness wasn't lower than that of concrete, and it had better toughness and shock resistance. The only drawback of this new material was probably the cost. However, for this expedition team, this wasn't too big of a problem. A year after they gained a foothold, they left behind 4 small exploration spacecraft that could only accommodate 3 people. 2 spacecraft carried information about this planet, as well as some collected flora, fauna, and mineral specimens, and began their return journey. It was conceivable that there would be more people arriving the next time. Although humans were eager to communicate with intelligent life outside of Earth, the governments of various countries weren't in a hurry to do so. No one knew how they would react to another civilization, especially when that civilization was encroaching on their living space. The top priority was to send more people over and gain a deeper understanding of this planet. They wanted to find materials and technologies on this planet that could break the bottleneck of human technology, truly gain a foothold on this planet, and develop the ability to protect themselves. Are you saying that the red moon in the sky is fake? Rinpoche narrowed his eyes when he heard what Claude said. Yes, and that crimson moon has a very strange power. Claude did not keep him in suspense at all. He quickly explained the situation. That crimson moon has a power that can make people ignore its differences. It directly affects people's hearts and brains. It's very strange. If I didn't have the habit of recording at all times, I'm afraid I would still be in the dark. Your Majesty, do you still remember the crimson moon from half a month ago? I saw that there seemed to be something in the crimson moon. I remembered it and wanted to observe it more. However, after an hour I forgot about it. The next day I found what I had written in my notes and almost thought it was an illusion. But I was not the only one who wrote it down, and so I knew that my thoughts had been changed by the red moon, and that it was a terrible power. Rinpoche was a little absent-minded. He vaguely remembered that this had happened to him more than once. However, he had never thought about it. Only when he heard Claude's words did he realize that he seemed to have overlooked something. Rinpoche's face immediately turned ugly. What's in the middle of the crimson moon? I don't know. It disappeared before we could observe it. We have been observing the red moon in the sky these days. It's very strange. It waxes and wanes just like the real thing. There are also craters and light reflections. It's hard for us to distinguish them. Then how do you know that the crimson moon is fake? It was deduced by Arvid. As early as a few years ago, we knew that one of the two satellites around this planet was fake. We had been observing and calculating, and Arvid calculated the two satellites separately. In the end, he found that some of the data on the red moon didn't match. The final result was that the red moon didn't have any effect on the planet under our feet. Rinpoche nodded slightly. Arvid was a very famous mathematician in the laboratory. Is there anything else you want to tell me? Rinpoche asked again. That's all. We'll keep a close eye on that red moon. If that thing appears again, we'll know what it is. However, this will probably take a few years and we don't know when that thing will appear again. Okay, continue to observe and inform me if there is any news. Rinpoche nodded. Can I make a small request? Claude rubbed his hands and said with some embarrassment. Say it. I will think about it, Rinpoche said. Since he wanted the horse to run, he had to give it grass to eat. Claude's progress wasn't fast, but it couldn't be helped. What he learned today was already a huge gain. Can we live in this city? This is the only modern city in this world. I have a familiar feeling here. I like it here. Our monitoring at the seaside has ended. In the future, we just need to collect data there regularly. Sure. Rinpoche didn't expect it to be such a simple request. Thank you very much, Your Highness. Claude was quite happy that he had achieved his wish. After Claude left, Rinpoche's face turned solemn. The crimson moon could actually affect people's thoughts. It was simply terrifying. The scariest thing was that if no one exposed it, you wouldn't know what happened at all. In such a situation, every intelligent being would feel fear. You didn't know if it only affected your perception of the crimson moon. After thinking carefully for a moment, he had a headache. He couldn't figure out what he had seen at that time. He only remembered that he seemed to have seen something and then forgot about it. This made Rinpoche's face even worse. After sitting there thinking for a long time, Rinpoche came to the hall where the supercomputer was placed. Master, do you remember me? Do you need any more special services? Lolita said with an extremely innocent look and voice. If you want to ask for any special services, then you have fallen into her trap. Anyway, you can't touch her. She is absolutely unscrupulous, and the person who created her was a psychopath. Remember one thing. The crimson moon in this world is fake. It can affect people's thinking and make them forget about its abnormalities, Rinpoche said with a serious face. He felt that artificial intelligence should not be affected by the crimson moon. He told Lolita so that she could remind him from time to time. The uniqueness of the crimson moon made him feel that it must be very important. Otherwise it wouldn't have hidden itself. In addition, since the existence of the 10,000 races, did no one else notice and record about the crimson moon? Would anyone know anything? Set a small goal first, such as 1 second. Remember, booksellers. Chapter 1163. The 237 regions of the Lansang territory were divided into 36 heavenly regions. Each powerful race controlled a region, and they governed many medium and weak races. This was called a heavenly region. However, not every powerful race had a divine master. Most of them had fallen in the war thousands of years ago. Therefore, the 7 heavenly regions were the most powerful, occupying nearly half of the 237 heavenly regions. 6 God Celestial Territory Citadel. You are Gu Bo from the Acceptance Spirit Tribe? In a room, A herdsman raised his head and looked at the door. A blue-winged young lady of the Blue Wings tribe walked in. She was about 1 meter tall and had blue wings. The man did not look like a herder, so he did not feel surprised at all. He just replied coldly, "I'm not a herder." He replied coldly, "Yes, I am Gubo. I have something important to report to the Divine Master. It is about the humans who were driven out 5,000 years ago. The Divine Master is in seclusion. I do not know when he will come out. Wait here first. When he goes out, someone will tell you where you cannot go," the young lady from the Blue Wings tribe said in a voice as beautiful as a bird's song. "This is very important," Gubo insisted in a cold voice. This was the first time he had left the 60,000 mountains, the first time he had come to Six God Celestial territory, and the first time he had come to Citadel. Other than that, he had no interest in this place. There were no jade-wasted slaves here, and there were no beautiful forests. This magnificent city was more like a cage to him. The humans were driven out of the banished land 5,000 years ago. Given the short lifespan of humans, they have already experienced hundreds of generations. Even if they have changed, they will not be a threat to us in a short period of time, the young lady from the Blue Wings tribe said in a cheerful and pleasant voice. This was not arrogance but self-confidence, which race here had not developed for thousands of years. Even if the humans came out, what could they do in a few years, a few decades, or even a few centuries? They might not even be able to produce a human sovereign. The young lady thought for a moment and said, "The stainless city is near the banished land, right? I will send someone to inform them. According to the agreement, if the humans return, they will be exterminated together. If the Divine Master Stainless is willing to act, the humans will definitely be exterminated." In her mind, the Divine Master Stainless would not act. She could just send some people to exterminate the humans. Gubo placed a hand on his chest and bowed. "Since it has come to this, I will return to the ancestral land to take a look." Gubo was similarly unfamiliar with the Lansang territory. It took him a lot of time to come here after asking around. Since it was done, he couldn't wait to go to the ancestors' land. "Then if you leave a little later, there will be a reward for you." The young lady of the Blue Wing clan flapped her wings and flew in the sky. She looked cheerful all the time. Seeing her, people of the Blue Wing clan felt that they should be like her, never sad and always happy. The Empress sat in a cave and was combing her hair in front of a silver mirror. The person in the mirror never changed. Even if another 100 years passed, it would still be the same. Even though it was located in a simple and crude location, the Empress had plenty of equipment. At that time, Rinpoche even prepared a tent and sleeping bag for her, but he didn't use them. As for the wine, no matter how much he tried to save it, he had already finished it. "Your Majesty." Jupu Hua stood in front of the cave and raised her voice. The Empress couldn't be seen from this position. After entering the cave, they still had to turn a corner to reach the place where the Empress cultivated. After a short while, the Empress walked out of the cave with a white background and red clothes. "What's the matter?" "There's a caravan." Jupu Hua's eyes were full of desire. "No." The Empress flatly refused. "Anyway, they already know what they need to know," Jupu Hua muttered. "The herdsman had left more than 2 years ago, so he must have spread the news a long time ago. But they don't know where we are," the Empress said coldly. "Tell them to behave themselves." Thinking about how these people in the martial arts hall had been suppressed for a long time and had been cultivating in the mountains every day, they had probably reached their limits. It was time to let them relax a little. "How many people have reached longevity heaven?" 3. Jupu Hua replied. 3. Among these aboriginals there were only 3. There were more spirit wheel experts who had broken through to heaven and earth than them. Excluding the previous 2, there were 5. However, these people had been stuck at the pass for many years. Now that they had changed places, they broke through in one go. The others weren't so fast. In fact, there were nearly 20 people who hadn't even condensed a heaven-grade weapon. The Empress said coldly, "I will send some spices and wine to the Wall of 2 Realms. When the caravan leaves, I will exterminate the 2 races at the Wall of 2 Realms. Until then, all of you stay here obediently." "Understood." Jupu Hua smiled wantonly. It had been a long time since she experienced blood and killing. Even if she died in battle, it would be more interesting than cultivating on this mountain peak. Not long after Jupu Hua left, the Empress felt a slight tremor under her feet, as if someone was hitting the mountain. Presumably, it was those bloodthirsty and ruthless fellows venting their energy. She glanced at the boundless plains in the distance. A large number of farmlands outside the mountains were cultivated by the gray thorns, but they basically didn't dare to enter the mountains. The Empress and the others had been here for nearly 2 years, but they didn't realize that there was such a group of fierce people nearby. In fact, these weak tribes posed little threat to the humans. The strongest among them were generally at the cardinal heaven level, so it was very easy to destroy them and even enslave them. The real enemies of the human race were the more than 200 strong races and the 36 strong races that were above them. The Empress's eyes were like the surging sea with countless lightning bolts. Is he going to break through again? The Empress thought to herself. Her hard work these days hadn't been in vain. She smirked and returned to the cave to take out her communication device to watch a movie. Unfortunately, there's no dessert or wine. The Empress felt deeply regretful as she ate some fruit. Cultivation was indeed hard, unlike in the palace. Oh? Is this the first batch of products? The shapes are too irregular and the sizes are different. Ren Baqin expressed his dissatisfaction as he looked at the crystals in front of him. For the first batch, there are still some procedures that haven't been completed, especially during the final condensation. In addition, Your Highness, there are no standards yet. If we want to formulate uniform rules, we need to first formulate standards. Lloyd Adams said respectfully. How big are the crystals that you produce? Ren Baqin asked. We can produce all the crystals that you see now, and they can also be used as standard sizes. Set the crystals into 5 grades. The lowest grade is grade 5, which is 4 centimeters long, 1 centimeter wide, and 1 centimeter thick. The 4th grade is 6 centimeters long, 5 centimeters wide, and 5 centimeters thick. The 3rd grade is 9 centimeters long, the 4th grade is 5 centimeters long, and the 5th grade is 75 centimeters long. The thickness of the crystal should be proportionally increased, Ren Baqin said after combining the feeling of using the crystals previously. A piece of grade 4 crystal was equivalent to 37 pieces of grade 5 crystal, and a piece of grade 3 crystal was equivalent to 37 pieces of grade 4 crystal, and so on. Grade 5 crystals could be used for 24 hours and could increase the vitality of an enclosed room by 50%. This type of crystal could be used as a circulating commodity. Some officials would want to buy some to nurture the younger generation in their families, especially for a genius like Tong Lan. Any family would go all out to mobilize resources to speed up her growth. One had to know that the human race still had a great enemy. If the enemy wasn't eliminated, no amount of wealth would be meaningful. Even a cardinal heaven expert would be able to produce a considerable effect if he used it. As for grade 3, some top experts could use it to break through barriers such as Li Yuanzhu and Hongwu. In addition, longevity heaven could also be used. Grade 5 is the most, followed by grade 4 and grade 3, which will be reduced proportionally. You can think about how to distribute the amount. As for grade 2 and grade 1, they aren't needed for the time being, Ren Baqin said. Understood. How many crystals can this batch produce? Ren Baqin asked. A total of 3 tons of ternary silicon sulfide was sent back this batch. According to the calculation of grade 5 crystals, 30,000 pieces can be produced. Ren Baqin calculated that 500 grams could produce 5 pieces of grade 5 crystals. 5 pieces of grade 5 crystals weighed no more than 2 kilograms. That was a ratio of 1:3. Produce 10,000 pieces of grade 5 crystals and the rest will be used to produce grade 4 and 3 crystals, Ren Baqin said. In this way, 10,000 pieces of grade 5 crystals, close to 3,000 pieces of grade 4 crystals, and more than 800 pieces of grade 3 crystals could be produced. It seemed like a lot, but one piece could only be used for a day to a week. It probably wouldn't take long for them to be used freely. The next batch would only be sent back after at least a year. We have to increase the investment in the wall between the 2 worlds. Chapter 1164. Break through the wall between the 2 worlds? Are you confident now? That's a good thing. Ren Baqin heard the Empress's voice coming from the radio station. Although there hadn't been any conflict with the 2 foreign tribes at the border yet, the supply of the Empress and the others had been cut off, and they were completely self-sufficient. If they could break through the wall, the supplies of the Empress and the others could be transported by the winged cavalry. Furthermore, some of the troops could be stationed outside the wall and make use of the abundant vitality from the outside world to train. Of course, there was also a lot of danger, especially since they didn't know the plans of the foreign tribes. Destroying the 2 foreign tribes could easily alarm them. It was difficult to even investigate the situation because they were of different races. Wildflowers? Where did they come from? I'm too busy with work every day. Ren Baqin's expression suddenly changed. Addicted to brothels? Who said that? I won't beat him to death. What silencing? Ah, what a joke. Come back and take a look if you don't believe me. Well, that's right. I'm now an expert at the Earth embryo realm and am only one step away from becoming a spirit wheel expert. No matter how big this step is, it's just one step. Erhua? I don't think Erhua's condition has much to do with me, right? I think she probably lacks motherly love. We're just doing some research. Why are you so anxious? Can you still come back and bite me? Ren Baqin laughed heartily. After hanging up, Ren Baqin looked uncertain. The Empress wouldn't impulsively come back, would she? Well, probably not. She wasn't someone who didn't care about the big picture. She would probably forget about this matter in 2 or 3 years. Her brain was only the size of a walnut. With his hands behind his back, he swayed out of the hall with a proud look on his face. Looking at the sky, it was getting dark. The radio station had been going on for about an hour. Where's Erhua? Forget it, you won't know even if I ask you. Ren Baqin waved his hand after asking. Erhua still hadn't appeared at this time, so she was probably at Shanhui House, which was about to become her second home. The older Erhua got, the more straightforward he became. He wasn't as cold as the Empress, nor was he like Ren Baqin. Instead, he liked to make friends from all walks of life. He liked to make friends at Shanhui House and would often treat everyone to drinks. After 2 years, Erhua had made a lot of scoundrels. Ren Baqin ordered someone to capture Erhua. He walked in the palace with his hands clasped behind his back as he pondered. He didn't know how the foreign races would react. Would they send a small number of experts or a large army? The latter was more likely to be the case. However, the number of troops wouldn't be too big. It was best to keep them busy and give them some trouble. He didn't know if those alien races had enough food resources. Otherwise, he could just destroy a large area of their cultivation. Ren Baqin's expression suddenly changed. If the foreign races didn't have enough food, it wouldn't be the mid-level races or the powerful races that would starve. Instead, they would exploit the weaker races even more. If the pressure reached a certain level, it might cause a rebound. Even among humans, if they were squeezed to a certain extent, there would also be a backlash. Therefore, he had always used a combination of suppression, pacification, and integration with the Yun nation. The foreign races might not have such an opinion. Unfortunately, he didn't know anything about the situation of the foreign races at present. If he could develop a group of spies among them, at the thought of this, Ren Baqin shook his head. The human race was the enemy of the foreign races. However, he stopped after taking a few steps. It was true that the human race was the enemy of the foreign races, but it didn't mean that there wouldn't be people from the foreign races who would seek refuge with them. Apart from the population, every life was an independent individual with its own thoughts and desires. At the thought of this, Ren Baqin suddenly had some hazy ideas. He quickly walked to the main hall where Lolita was and told her about his ideas to help him analyze them. The cabinets in the main hall flashed wildly for more than 10 seconds before Lolita said, "Do you know that there's a crime called pyramid selling?" "Yes, that's it." Ren Baqin clapped his hands and laughed loudly. "I actually forgot about this. Pyramid selling can make people crazy, confuse their eyes and minds, and make them devote everything to a false goal. It can even make people deceive themselves for a better future. Even if they know that it's fake, they will make themselves believe that it's true." Lolita described the effects of pyramid selling to Ren Baqin. "Yes, that's it." Ren Baqin's mind suddenly became clear. He had used this trick in the past and deliberately threw a monk into Tianjin Basin. It had been 14 or 15 years since then, and Buddhism had developed rapidly in Tianjin Basin. It had to be said that it had played a significant role in stabilizing Tianjin Basin. If they were to combine the ideas of MLM and Buddhism, and then spread it to the weaker races, they were originally at the bottom of many races and couldn't see a future after being bullied. As long as there weren't experts at the level of the human emperor, this would always be the case. If he gave them hope, the more he thought about it, the more excited he got. Unfortunately, his previous line of thought had been limited by the fact that the human race and the foreign races couldn't coexist. He had forgotten that the foreign races weren't monolithic, but were divided into strong, medium, and weak races. Each of them had different desires. Even if they were of the same rank, their desires were completely different. Fortunately, it's not too late. Although the longer it takes, the greater the effect. No one knows how long it will take for the foreign races to react. Even if it's a short period of time, we can at least develop some informants, obtain some information about the foreign races, and even cause some destruction. Come. Ren Baqin shouted as he went out. "Your Highness." Send word to Tianjing Basin that Xing Ruo is coming to see me. Let him bring a few disciples with outstanding eloquence, Rinpoche said. Your Highness, huh? Who's Xing Ruo? A monk? He should be quite famous in Tianjing Basin. As long as you pass on my orders, someone will naturally be able to do it, Rinpoche replied. In addition, go and ask the laboratory how many of those foreign races are still alive. It's best if they're a little younger but not too young, Rinpoche instructed. After the guards left, Rinpoche walked around the courtyard a few times and waited for the little monk Xing Ruo to come. Considering his age, he should be a monk by now. Rinpoche needed to combine the ideas of Buddhism with pyramid selling and ask him to brainwash the foreign races. He wasn't sure if Xing Ruo would agree. No matter what, he had to agree even if he didn't agree. In any case, Rinpoche was still the arhat that Xing Ruo mentioned, and he hoped that Xing Ruo wouldn't be too stubborn. After thinking for a while, Rinpoche instructed another guard, go to the rearguard commandery and ask them to report on the development of Buddhism in Tianjing Basin over the past few years. Find out who the important figures are, including Xing Ruo's style of doing things, their hobbies and their social relations. In addition, inform righteous sect leader Lin Dong to make a trip to the capital. Rinpoche suddenly remembered that Lin Dong was also an expert in dealing with evil cults. This was his job after all. He was prepared to use both orthodox and evil cults together with pyramid selling. As for whether this Pandora's box would cause any future trouble, that would be discussed later. No matter what, it wasn't as important as dealing with the foreign races. First, set a small goal, for example 1 second. Chapter 1165. Class dismissed. Today's homework is this formula. Handed in 3 days. I don't want to see anyone copy the wrong name again. Qing Lian put away the book on the podium and left the classroom with it in her arms. What are you so proud of? A group of teenagers curled their lips and looked at the formula projected on the wall in front of them. They screamed hysterically and scratched their heads. Ah, this damned great Xia woman. Ah, the wailing of a defeated dog is really pleasant to listen to. Qing Lian maintained an elegant smile as she walked around the campus. I like to see your helpless faces when you want to kill me. The questions this time are still too easy, but we have to do it step by step to prevent them from complaining. We can use more difficult questions next time. She turned the corner and saw a delicate girl in a fluttering white dress. You're actually still alive. The corners of Tong Lan's mouth twitched when she saw Qing Lian, and she gave a spurious smile. You actually haven't graduated yet? After Qing Lian said this, she saw that Tong Lan's expression had completely frozen. I hope I can give you a graduation certificate one day. Qing Lian pursed her lips and smiled as she walked past Tong Lan. Tong Lan let out a series of hysterical screams after Qing Lian had left for a long time. You can't beat her in a verbal battle. Shurgan, who had been maintaining a calm expression, finally spoke. You can't beat her either. Shurgan continued to stab her. Shurgan, I will fight it out with you. Tong Lan was going crazy. Tong Lan chased him back to the laboratory and sighed. When are we going to graduate? Soon. Aren't we going to graduate next year? We are only 1 year away. Just bear with it. The girl nearby frowned. Even though she was consoling Tong Lan, she was also at a loss when this matter was brought up. Yes. High school, university, and postgraduate. God knows what will happen after postgraduate. I feel that I won't be able to hold on until the day of graduation. I don't see any pain at all. When you graduate, remember to ask your grandson to burn the graduation certificate for me. Su Peng clutched his head and squatted on the ground as he lamented. Everyone's faces turned ugly when they heard this. It was obvious that Tong Lan had touched their sore spot. Have you calculated the engine data of the Wingspan 112? Haven't you calculated it yet? Who asked you to be lazy? Tong Lan's mood worsened, and she immediately vented her anger on the others. Qing Lian put the lesson plan back in the office, put on a pair of rose-red, metal-framed glasses and wrote the letter. She was different from XNJ, the bespectacled girl who was 5 meters tall and couldn't tell the difference between humans and animals. He found a noodle shop outside the school. It sold potato noodle or sweet potato noodle stew. After the meal, he began to have nothing to do. He walked to a corner of the campus and looked at the students who were making calls to their families from the public phone booth. He was a little dazed. Life here was pretty good. There weren't many messy things to do. All he had to do was go to class and research his favorite mathematics. Other than that, she also felt a little lonely. After all, as long as one was human, they would need to socialize. He wanted to make a phone call like those people, but he didn't know who to call. There was no family. Friends, no. He used to have a partner, Su Qing, but he didn't want to receive a call from him, right? Qing Lian had a self-mocking smile on her face. Compared to other things, bickering with those students was more interesting. She felt like she wasn't alone. Just as she was mocking herself, she noticed a few strange people walking over from a distance. They were wearing clothes that didn't belong to any place. The first half of their bodies was a white robe, and the other half was made of pieces of red cloth sewn together and draped over their bodies. Behind them were a few people wearing long robes made of grayish-black cloth. They looked like beggars who were trying to patch up acne. However, these people were different. They were very clean and bald, which was quite rare outside of the Aboriginals. In any case, Qing Lian only knew one bald person like this. Not only was he bald, but he didn't even have eyebrows. His exposed skin also didn't have any hair. Amit Ba. This humble monk, Xing Rua, greets you. The few bald people suddenly stopped when they passed by Qing Lian. The one who looked delicate and pretty suddenly put his palms together and greeted her. Qing Lian suddenly remembered who these people were. They were from a very prosperous sect in Tianjin Basin called Buddhism. It seemed to have an unclear relationship with Zhao Prince Consort. In recent years, it had been very prosperous in Tianjin Basin. Even some of the students who came from Tianjin Basin believed in this religion. What's the matter? Qing Lian looked at the delicate and pretty monk in front of her with a head full of question marks. This humble monk noticed that Benefactor paid some attention to us. It's fate that we met, so I wanted to have a chat with Benefactor. It's fate that we met? Qing Lian asked. Otherwise, why would we meet in this vast sea of people? Why would Benefactor pay attention to us? Why would we talk here? Xing Rua smiled. Qing Lian's mouth twitched. There must be a lot of fated people. Why not? Xing Rua smiled. Fated people and pitiful people. Who can distinguish the things in this world? If you can't break through the fog in your heart, you'll be like a fish in the water, unable to know yourself. Just as Qing Lian wanted to refute, her expression suddenly changed, and she seemed to have understood something. After a moment, she smiled and asked, "Is there a hidden meaning in your words?" "It's just nonsense." Xing Rua smiled, put his palms together and took his leave. As Qing Lian watched them leave, the inexplicable sense of loneliness disappeared without a trace, and the sense of alienation she felt from her surroundings also lessened. Who was that benefactor just now? A monk behind Xing Rua suddenly asked. He was a little puzzled and didn't know what Xing Rua's words meant. A fated person. Xing Rua chuckled. Greetings, Arhat. Xing Rua greeted Rinpoche. I haven't seen you for a long time and you've grown up. Rinpoche sized up the delicate and pretty monk who looked about 20 years old and smiled. Back then that monk was still quite likable. After not seeing him for so many years he had actually grown up. It's all superficial. Xing Rua smiled. Since it's superficial, why is this robe white? Rinpoche pointed at Xing Rua's monk robe. Because it looks good. Xing Rua said matter-of-factly. Rinpoche was shocked by Xing Rua's confident manner. I don't look at the surface but others do. Xing Rua continued with a smile. How could this delicate monk with fluttering white robes compare to a sloppy monk with a robe made of cloth? Rinpoche was speechless and then burst out laughing. This Xing Rua was very quick-witted. No wonder he created such a big situation in Tianjin Basin. Taking advantage of the chaos and riots in Tianjin Basin, as well as Rinpoche's support, Buddhism had almost spread throughout Tianjin Basin over the past decade. There were millions of believers and there were even dozens of temples. Xing Rua, who wasn't even 10 years old at that time, had created such a big situation in the past decade, which was really amazing. Furthermore, Xing Rua had set up an infinite treasury to store the things that the believers donated to the temple. If there was a natural disaster or someone had difficulty making a living, they would take it out and use it to help ordinary people. This move also allowed Buddhism to expand even faster. However, there were also many drawbacks. Although Xing Rua had good intentions, there were still some monks who filled their pockets and profited wantonly. This was what he learned from the report from the rearguard commandery. Chapter 1166. The two sat down and chatted for a while before Rinpoche said, Then close the boundless treasury. Disaster relief is the responsibility of the imperial court. If you do it, what will the imperial court do? Xing Rua remained calm and put his palms together. We will do as you say. Rinpoche nodded slightly and was satisfied with his attitude. Although this concerned the image of the imperial court, Rinpoche had good intentions. It was fine now, but in a few years, when the good and bad in Buddhism were mixed, the boundless treasury would be criticized. What do you think about races other than humans? Rinpoche asked. All living things are equal. What if their goal is to destroy the human race? Xing Ruo raised his eyebrows and revealed a beautiful smile. Arhat will look at it however you say. Slippery? Rinpoche shook his head. Wasn't Xing Ruo a little crooked? However, this little monk didn't seem to be very serious. You are the Arhat and I am a monk. How can we measure? Xing Ruo chuckled. Upon hearing this, Rinpoche somewhat understood what he meant. In this world, besides the human race, there are thousands of other races that are similar to humans. They are all intelligent beings and have their own thoughts. However, they are enemies of the human race, Rinpoche said slowly. Amit Ba, there is no liberation from all karma. Xing Ruo chanted. I won't tell you about many things. I came here this time because I want you to preach to them. However, it's not Zen. Please speak. Xing Ruo bowed slightly. Ajati Void Hometown, Rinpoche said. So it's the Ajati matriarch. Xing Ruo's expression changed slightly as he sighed. The Ajati matriarch, Void Hometown, came from the school of White Lotus, which came from the Pure Land sect. It was a mixture of many other sects and was divided into hundreds of small and large sections. It was very inclusive and could accommodate all kinds of systems. The teachings were simple, easy to practice and easy to spread. The simple teachings meant that they were easy to understand and remember. The easy to practice meant that it could be spread widely. This was also the reason why Rinpoche chose it. You actually know about the Ajati matriarch. Rinpoche was slightly surprised as Xing Ruo was less than 10 years old when he came. I've heard my master talk about it. That's good to hear. Rinpoche nodded. I hope to use the framework of the White Lotus School, with the Ajati matriarch and the Void Hometown as the foundation, and integrate the religion and ancestor worship of the foreign races. Every god of the foreign races must be integrated into it, either as the incarnation of the Ajati matriarch, or as the god sent by her. Xing Ruo lowered his head and pondered for a long time. He then sighed in his heart and said, Arhat has misled me. Rinpoche laughed and said, If you can use this opportunity to clean the bright mirror, how can you say that I have wronged you? Maybe it's to help you. Both of them had their reasons for saying that. If Xing Ruo did as Rinpoche said, he would start to talk nonsense and have delusions of grandeur. His mind would not be clear and it would be difficult for him to be cautious in the future. What Rinpoche meant was that if he took this opportunity to mix his thoughts with the various contents of the White Lotus Society, it would naturally be difficult for him to be careful. However, if he could clean his heart and rebuild it, he would be able to surpass his previous self. Let's do as you say, Xing Ruo said softly. Seeing that Xing Ruo had agreed, Rinpoche was delighted and smiled. I'll introduce someone to you later. He pondered in his heart. From a certain perspective, Lin Dong and Xing Ruo could be considered peers. When they met, they might have to address each other as fellow Taoist. After a few more days, Lin Dong arrived at the capital. Rinpoche and Lin Dong had a discussion first, and Lin Dong naturally agreed. Then the three of them met and talked about the matter, including the White Lotus Society's philosophy, and discussed it together. For example, if one didn't receive them, one would die here, live there, die there, and live here. One would be trapped until reincarnation, suffer all kinds of hardships, and never be free. This was called wandering in one's hometown. On the other hand, the void hometown was filled with endless life and death hardships. Once one ascended to one's hometown, there would never be life and death, and one would be happy. In some ways, this was very similar to the so-called God Nation. It had to be said that even if humans had gone through different cultures, there were similarities in their imaginations and pursuits. Mixing in ancestor worship and some views of the righteous sect became the basic doctrine of the new White Lotus Society. After that, it would be used as a framework to incorporate the myths of the various foreign races to suit different groups. During the preaching process, various brainwashing methods would be used. For example, the 5-level 3-level system, the number of followers, the level of priests, what privileges would they enjoy when they were alive, and how they would be watched by the Ajati matriarch. For example, in terms of macroscopic ecology, every life was burdened with sins since birth. For example, some high-level priests would talk about how they used to be, what kind of life they led after joining the sect, how they helped each other, how they reached the peak of their lives with the help of other believers, and how they were watched by the Ajati matriarch. They could enjoy a better life when they were alive and directly enter the void hometown after death. They also had to forcibly associate the myths of the various races with the Ajati matriarch. These had to be done every day, and finally, a lie told 10,000 times would become the truth. In addition, not everyone could join the sect. Only those who were fated could join. As for what was considered fated, it would depend on the situation. Amit Ba. Listening to Rinpoche and Lin Dong talk about various things about the White Lotus Society and their preaching methods, Xing Ruo lowered his head and kept chanting the name of Buddha. He felt that his soul had been polluted, and it was as if he saw the 18 levels of hell waving at him. On the contrary, Lin Dong had been discussing with Rinpoche in high spirits. For the first time, he realized that Zhao Prince Consort was also good at setting up sections. Especially those so-called multi-level marketing methods. It was an eye-opener for him. At the same time, it also enlightened him. Some of the theories of the White Lotus Society also allowed him to discover some shortcomings of Jingtian sect. As long as he was given some time in the future, he would be able to make Jingtian sect 10 times more prosperous. Listening to Your Highness's words is better than reading 10,000 books. Lin Dong was overjoyed. Don't think too much. This is a last resort. Rinpoche saw Lin Dong's devotion and joy and felt that this guy would be dangerous in the future. In the future, he had to strictly control Jingtian sect and prevent it from spreading to Dayo. Otherwise it might cause trouble. After a few days, Rinpoche and Lin Dong settled on the teachings and other aspects. Even the name of the White Lotus Society would be changed to the new religion. In the future, depending on the situation of the various races, they could make changes to suit them. The next step was to look for some test subjects. Coincidentally, after the extermination of the foreign races in recent years, they had captured some weak foreign races. Many of them were teenagers and they would be used as test subjects. If they succeeded, they could use these test subjects to spread the new religion to the foreign races. As a mid-level race, it would be easier for them to do this. First, set a small goal such as 1 second. Chapter 1167. The Ajati matriarch is the mother of all gods, born in the endless darkness, immortal. You are all the children of the Ajati matriarch. You are all brothers and sisters. You have suffered all kinds of pain, humiliation and suffering, death here, life there, death there, life here, reincarnation in the 6 realms. Where is your hometown? You can't return to your hometown. You can't enjoy peace and joy forever. We don't believe in those ghosts and gods. Our God is the Thunder Mother. The Thunder Mother will definitely defeat your God. A Thunder barbarian youth shouted angrily. What does your Thunder Mother look like? What's her story? The Thunder Mother is the source of all things, the ancestor of all living beings. Life is born from destruction. The Earth Mother is the ancestor of all living beings. The Water Goddess is all living beings are born from water. How do you know that the Thunder Mother is not the Ajati matriarch? How do you know that the Earth Mother and the Water Goddess are not the Ajati matriarch? There is only one world. There are so many gods. Then who created the world? Which God is real? The Ajati matriarch is an eternal existence. You can't see or hear with your eyes. She is an eternal existence, but she can't be seen, transcending time and space. You see the greenwood fangs, it's the Ajati matriarch. You see the kind face, it's also the Ajati matriarch. However you see her, she is how you see her. Do you think such an existence is limited to what we see? We are all the children of the Ajati matriarch because we see different things. We think they are different gods. The Ajati matriarch sent 3 gods divided into 3 periods to rule the world. The god of the past always exists in the past, the god of the present always exists in the present, and the god of the future exists in the eternal future. Just say, Ajati matriarch, void hometown, and you have fate with the Ajati matriarch. You are fated with the Ajati matriarch, hence you have a mark. No matter how long you sink into the sea of bitterness, you are still you. As long as the mark is still there, one day you will be brought back to the void hometown by the Ajati matriarch. In the void hometown, there is no distinction between men and women, there is no distinction between the top and the bottom. If there is a man and a woman, then there is a difference between a man and a woman. If there is a difference between a man and a woman, then there is a difference between a man and a woman. We have the same identity. We are the children of the Ajati matriarch. Every day in a house, a few people from the righteous sect in Xing Ruo would take turns to give lessons to the captured young people of the foreign tribes. They talked about God, pain, life, and all living beings. Children who received it well would be able to eat better food and live in better homes. Children who did not accept it well would be punished. Even in modern times, many people believed in these theories, not to mention these alien youngsters who had been captured and imprisoned and suffered so much. Besides, there were also food and other rewards. Under the constant brainwashing and various related hints in daily life, a fanatical atmosphere was created. In just half a month, half of the children were chanting, Ajadi Matriarch, Void Hometown. As for whether or not they truly believed in it like they did on the surface, that was not important. What was important was that they were a group. Every day the people around them believed in the Ajadi Matriarch, and they were all fanatical believers. After a long time, as the saying goes, a lie told 10,000 times is the truth. And before they were sent back, there would be another selection. With the lie detector, it would not be easy for these children to deceive them. Xing Ruo once again left that place. There was no expression on his face, but his eyes were filled with pain and confusion. In order to protect his disciples, he took the initiative to bear the responsibility that he and his disciples should bear, so that they would not sink into that fanatical atmosphere. Even he had been greatly affected these days, let alone those disciples. As he walked, he chanted softly, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. When he was deep in the Prajna Paramitha, he saw that the 5 aggregates were empty, and he passed through all sufferings. Sarira, form is not different from emptiness, and emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Perception, action, and consciousness are also the same. Big monk, big monk. The crisp voice of a young girl woke Xing Ruo up. When he looked up, he realized that he had arrived at the door of the house of Shanhui. A young girl in a blue dress, who looked to be about 13 or 14 years old, was sitting behind the table with one leg propped up on the chair, waving at him. Amit Ba, so it's your highness. Xing Ruo chuckled and walked in. A few youths from the aboriginals turned their heads to look at him before turning back again. Big monk, do you want a drink today? It's my treat. Hua happily called out to Xing Ruo. The money today belongs to the princess, right? Xing Ruo smiled. Every time he saw this princess, he would be in a good mood. Although monks didn't care about many things, he had a good impression of this straightforward and unpretentious young girl. Every time he chatted with her, he would be in a good mood. Otherwise, he would have had a hard time these days. Hua rolled his eyes and smiled. Then I'll treat you with my money. Xing Ruo burst out laughing. Your Highness, use your own money to treat us as well, the aboriginal youth beside him shouted. Hua grabbed his money pouch, flipped it open and said in distress, then you can't drink as much as you want. 1 cup is enough. After this, your Highness can use my cousin's money to treat us to more drinks. The youth laughed. Hua wrinkled his nose. Xiongyan doesn't have much money. Everyone burst out laughing again. These people were the children of high-ranking officials, and Hua had robbed many of their younger siblings' pocket money. However, although they looked like they were being bullied, Hua was very loyal when they were in trouble. In addition, they often drank together at Shanhui House, so they didn't mind at all. I'll pay for each jar of wine on the table. Give me a side dish and a plate of braised beef, Hua shouted. Immediately, the surrounding people cheered, Thank you, your highness. Big monk, tell me a story, Hua said. I don't want to listen to stories about cutting meat to feed the eagles. I want to listen to Monkey Son. I like that monkey. Although she had heard stories about Monkey Son on Earth, she liked listening to Xing Ruo. Xing Ruo would always comment on something and she found it very interesting. The princess has the personality of the great sage, so of course she likes him. However, in exchange, how about you sing a song? Xing Ruo asked with a smile. Hua immediately agreed. Xing Ruo continued talking until the lanterns were lit. Shanhui House was filled with people and not long after it was full. Let's call it a day. I've talked so much that my mouth is dry. Xing Ruo changed the topic. Hua didn't have enough. He looked around and saw that everyone was listening to his story. He immediately said, If you tell a story, the boss will be happy. You're very welcome. A big man outside the crowd laughed and asked someone to bring a jar of wine. This is for your highness and the monk. Thank you. Hua said happily. Since we've drunk the wine, it's time for your highness to sing. This is the boss's. If you want to listen, you have to buy me a drink. Hua said with a smile. Since your highness wants to sing, I'll sing for everyone here today. Suddenly, a woman's voice was heard. Sister Qinglian. Hua stood on a chair and greeted her with a smile. A moment later, people outside the Shanhui House could hear hands tapping on the table, and a young girl's clear voice could be heard. Looking down at the blue dragon moving, looking down at the lonely mountain, looking down at the world's peace song, I bend my body to the sky. Holding the white jade brush, please write about my true nature. I have a jar of old wine for you. P.S. Yi Xiaoyan's song of inviting wine to appear. It was a song that he liked. It was very grand. Chapter 1168. Send these 7 children to the border between the 2 worlds. You will also be responsible for the rest. First, establish a foothold and then expand into the surrounding areas. What you have to do is to investigate the customs and appearance of the foreign races, especially the movements of the experts and when they will attack us. This is the most important thing. Secondly, expand as much as possible under the premise of self-preservation. In addition, don't forget to do your daily homework along the way. We don't have enough time here. However, we still need to spend half a year on the road. Make sure they are completely brainwashed and don't have the slightest inclination to escape. If they have that inclination, kill them immediately. Compared to the foreign races, we are too weak. Any small disturbance will cause us to suffer heavy losses. If the foreign races attack us with all their might, we can only face destruction. Remember, you can't afford to take the risk, let alone the human race, Rinpoche said as he sat in the seat of honor. Don't worry, Your Highness. I will go with you this time. Lin Dong cupped his hands. Thank you, Rinpoche said in a deep voice. In addition, you can command remotely. If you can find a suitable disguise, you might as well explore the territory of the foreign races. Rinpoche looked solemn. This matter was of great importance. Time was too short. The human race had too little time to develop and prepare. If the foreign races attacked with all their might now, he would have no choice but to escape with the Empress and heir Hua. Until they developed their own spaceship technology, the human race would be able to attack and defend. As for the rest, it would depend on whether the experts of the human race could withstand the experts of the foreign races. As long as they could contend with the upper ranks of the foreign races, it would be easier to deal with the middle and lower ranks. No matter how many ordinary troops there were, it was just a matter of one nuclear bomb. If one wasn't enough, then another would be used. This time, Lin Dong personally led a few experts of the righteous sect and 7 completely brainwashed foreign race teenagers to the Lansang territory to develop a group of disciples among the foreign races. In addition to setting up spies, he also wanted to find an opportunity to slow down the foreign races. The next day, Rinpoche brought Lin Dong and the others to the airport outside the capital. What's this? Lin Dong looked at the plane in front of him. It looks different from those tractors and trucks. It's much bigger and looks like a bird. Take this plane, Rinpoche said with a smile. If we take this now, we can reach Clear Valley. It's 3,000 miles deeper than Wuxia City. We can save half a year. Fly over? Oh. No wonder Your Highness said that the journey would take half a year. I originally thought that it would take at least a year. Lin Dong circled the plane a few times and said with interest. There's nothing you can do if you're airsick, but don't be rash. We're in the sky, Rinpoche reminded as he suddenly recalled something. Over the past 2 years, there had been more than one case where some idiot got airsick and smashed a hole in the fuselage to get some air. One of them directly caused the plane to crash into one of the 60,000 mountains. Only a few people managed to escape from the crash. However, the reason why the plane had failed to land was probably because those people had escaped. Before the plane had even landed, it had been hit by the people who were running for their lives. The plane had almost fallen apart. That's right, all planes were equipped with landing hills. If they encountered any problems, they could just parachute and escape. However, some people escaped too quickly, they tore the plane apart and escaped. Fortunately, planes were mainly used to transport cargo, so there weren't many casualties. Unfortunately, all the cargo on that plane was buried in the sea of fire. Lin Dong happily boarded the plane with anticipation. The noise of the plane taking off finally made him understand where the loud noise he occasionally heard in the capital these days came from. One shouldn't expect Dayo's planes to be very comfortable. With the loud noise and extreme flight experience, taking a plane wasn't as relaxing as riding a roller coaster. As soon as the plane took off, the 7 foreign youths and a few experts from the righteous sect looked at the ground outside the window, which was getting smaller and smaller. They didn't expect Dayo to have reached this stage. Zhao Prince Consort is amazing. Lin Dong looked out of the window and smacked his lips. To be able to make the Empress fall in love with him, he naturally has something extraordinary about him, someone beside him said with a smile. That's right. Many people thought that it was incredible. If those people were here now, they would probably find it even more incredible, Lin Dong said with a smile. When the Empress set the engagement, it shocked many people. Before that, they were all curious about what kind of person could make the Empress fall in love with him. In the end, it was a little guy who hadn't even reached the man-wheel level. Looking back now, Everyone's thoughts at that time were indeed quite funny. However, very soon no one paid attention to Lin Dong's sigh. Their faces were pale, and their hands were tightly gripping the handles to resist the violent turbulence of the plane's ascent. Let me tell you, all of you, sit down obediently. We are in the sky. Lin Dong repeated what Ren Baqin had just said to everyone. I know. Even if we die, we will die here. Su Jiaojiao, who was holding Lin Dong's left and right hands, was pale. Stop talking about dying. It's still too early to die. I still want to see what the god of the foreign races looks like. The god is immortal, yet he calls himself a god. How arrogant. Lin Dong curled his lips. No, I want to vomit. A foreign youth suddenly shouted. Oh, gulp. Alright, I swallowed it. Ugh. At this moment, everyone was holding the bags in front of them and vomiting. The plane was filled with a pungent sour smell. Oh, I want to open the windows to get some fresh air. Lin Dong couldn't help but sigh. One day later, everyone arrived at Anchuan City and had to rest here before heading to Aqing Valley. As soon as the plane landed, everyone rushed out of the plane with weak footsteps. After a day of turbulence, especially during the ascent and descent, everyone felt that they would die if they sat any longer. The ground crew immediately carried buckets to wash up. Hey Wuxia, why did you vomit too? Suhu also vomited? Don't mention it. There was a guy on the plane who vomited, and then swallowed it back. The two flight crew members looked ashen-faced. Now that you mention it, I want to vomit too. The ground crew members' faces immediately changed. This scene and smell were too strong. On this plane, the only people who weren't affected were Lin Dong and the two pilots. After Lin Dong got off the plane, he calmly looked at the mountain city that was built around the mountain in the distance. At this time, Ren Baqin had returned to Earth. The spacecraft that returned from the Horn Dragon Galaxy had returned. In addition to bringing back a large number of animal and plant mineral samples from the Horn Dragon Galaxy, it also brought back some specific parameters of the two galaxies. For example, the time difference between the two worlds that Ren Baqin had always been concerned about. Chapter 1169. I heard that the Easterners used to be rather thin and weak, but now they have all become strong and healthy. Look at the leader. He looks fierce and strong, but I think I'm fiercer. Well, what do you think? A white man was running on the field. When he saw the people in front of him, he flexed his arms to bulge his muscles. Shut your beak, Johnny, if you don't want to die. The big guy beside him suddenly changed his expression and stopped him. Why are you so timid? Alright, I admit that those Easterners are indeed quite good at fighting. However, this is the International Space Center. Although we are in their territory, they won't do anything to you. You are too timid. The big guy called Johnny spread his hands and was very dissatisfied with his companion's cautiousness. Besides, I also said that he's very strong, but I think I'm stronger. Damn it. I'll say it again. Shut your beak and others won't do anything to you. That person is different. Will was about to go crazy. It wasn't a big deal to be arrogant, but shouldn't he have some foresight? Do you know him? Nonsense, I really wonder if your brain is full of dog-sh*t. Will said angrily. He then lowered his voice and said, Gotham City, the disaster that happened more than a decade ago. Johnny thought for a while and then came to a realization. The devil from the east? When I was watching that video, I kept paying attention to that chick in red. She's really charming. Fuck. Will cursed. He finally understood what it meant to be afraid of a pig-like teammate instead of a godlike opponent. Is that so? I also think that she's very charming. A magnetic man's voice came from the side. Will turned his head and saw a bald man with no eyebrows and no hair. Under the sunlight, the man's bald head reflected light like metal. You have good taste. Ren Baqin smiled very kindly. You are really enviable, lucky brother. Johnny was stunned when he saw Ren Baqin. He didn't expect Ren Baqin to hear him from so far away. He then praised him. His words were full of envy. The other party's reaction and words were somewhat unexpected. Ren Baqin was prepared to stuff him into the ground so that he wouldn't have to look at women for the rest of his life. However, he changed his mind. Although that's the truth, don't talk about someone else's wife behind their back, especially when the other party can casually plant you like a sunflower, Ren Baqin said lightly and drifted away. It wasn't until Ren Baqin and the others were far away that Will felt as if he had been granted amnesty. His clothes were drenched in sweat. He yelled at Johnny, You bastard, stay away from me in the future. Ren Baqin didn't come here only for the return of the spacecraft. Although this matter was very important to everyone on Earth. However, Rinpoche already knew what he wanted to know. The time difference between the Horn Dragon Galaxy and Earth was 7 to 9. This meant that 7 hours in the Horn Dragon Galaxy would be 9 hours on Earth. The time difference between Dayo and Earth was far from that huge. As for passing through the nodes of the curve, it did not take much time. At most, it would take no more than 3 days. This number made many people excited. As for the specimens brought back by the spaceship, he was only interested in the research results. He only wanted to know what the specimens could bring, not what they were. Half a day later, Rinpoche looked at the equipment that was half the size of a room, frowned and asked, "Can this thing be smaller?" "Maybe in the future, but it can't be done now. This thing requires a large amount of positive and negative charges to be injected into an area in a short period of time to achieve a certain potential difference between the upper and lower layers of the cumulonimbus cloud. This is the so-called thunderstorm." A bespectacled middle-aged man shrugged. Rinpoche pondered for a moment and looked at the image displayed on the screen beside him. 3 tornadoes that looked like earth dragons connected the sky and the earth, sweeping everything between heaven and earth. He couldn't help but be tempted. What if there are no cumulonimbus clouds? Can it be artificially created? Can it be used on the ground? In theory it can be done, but it requires more energy, more power, and more accurate charge injection. It will take at least a few years to conduct various tests. If the progress is slow, I'm afraid it will take more than 10 years. How long can the created tornadoes last? Probably from 10 minutes to 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the specific environment and weather conditions. Rinpoche thought about it and was still tempted. Someone will talk to you later. Rinpoche was quite optimistic about this weather weapon. Even if it couldn't do anything to the experts of the foreign races, it could sweep through the rear of the foreign races, whether it was the grain transport team, the fertile soil for planting, or even the granary. With the speed of the tornadoes, they could sweep through an area in 30 to 40 minutes. Moreover, the other party wouldn't have thought that the power of heaven and earth was actually artificially created. "Where's Professor Arvid?" Rinpoche turned around and looked for him. "I want to see your system." A moment later, Rinpoche, led by another team, saw 3 sets of equipment being assembled on the spacecraft. To be precise, there were 3 sets of laser cannons. More than a decade ago, Rinpoche had seen this thing in the United States and its power. After more than a decade of development, the application of nuclear energy on Earth had become more mature and had shrunk a lot. The same was true for the laser cannons. This time they were installed on the spacecraft and didn't need to be launched from the ground to the satellite and then bounced back. The caliber was also much larger at 15 centimeters. Previously, due to the problem of the reflection angle, the duration of each attack was extremely short. Now, it could last up to 3 seconds and continuously output a laser beam. With this size and performance, Rinpoche could reluctantly accept it. However, in his opinion, it would be best if they could shrink to a size of 1 meter while maintaining their power. That way there would be hope for them to become individual weapons. These 2 sets of equipment were installed on the spacecraft. This time, the spacecraft was heading to the Triangulum Galaxy again for an extremely important mission, which was to try to contact and communicate with the Thunder Barbarians. These 2 sets of equipment were the fists that Earth had displayed in this aspect. If the communication didn't go well, depending on the situation, they would decide whether to use force to deter them. Rinpoche was happy to see this happen. He wanted to see how these weapons would perform in actual combat. If the 2 sides could really communicate, it would be a good thing. Rinpoche would be able to find out some information about the foreign races and might even be able to learn some clues about the Thunder Barbarians on Zishao planet. For example, why were they there? Rinpoche even had the idea of going there personally to observe. In any case, he spent most of his time in Dayo, and the duration of space travel wasn't too much of a problem for him. However, after thinking about the risks, Rinpoche dispelled this idea. No one knew if their shuttle would be affected when they were near the curve nodes. This was the universe, and communication between 2 places couldn't even be done now. If there was even the slightest impact while he was shuttling, it might cause the most tragic consequences. It was better to stay on Earth. Chapter 1170. Are you going to make a move tonight? Rinpoche heard the news as soon as he returned to Dayo. The caravan has already left and will come again in at least a year. This is the time to make a move. These foreign tribes can't be allowed to stay any longer, the Empress replied from the other end of the radio station. Rinpoche was silent for a while before saying, "Be careful." He couldn't tell what was in the Empress's laughter, but he felt that it was more of a sneer. The Empress's next words confirmed his suspicions. You asked me to bite you when I return. I remember that. Rinpoche thought for a while before recalling what he had said a few days ago. Come back and bite me if you dare. He laughed dryly and said, I was just joking. You don't have to be so serious, right? The Empress smiled coldly and said, an emperor doesn't joke. You are the regent, so you naturally have to keep your words. Rinpoche was a little embarrassed and asked, Can I bite your D*CK? The Empress's face turned green and immediately hung up. Ignoring the strange expressions of the people around her, she looked at the tribe in the distance, which was still lit up, and coldly ordered, Do it! Ha 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 ha. Before anyone could make any other expressions, one of the tall and sturdy ancient race men laughed out loud. Following his laughter, dozens of people rushed into the darkness with bloodthirsty laughter. This bunch of lunatics. Bloodthirsty maniacs. Fire Snake Tao Chen laughed. These days he already knew what the savages of the Aboriginals were like. They were the type that would itch if they didn't stir up trouble for a day. The Aboriginals in Lan City were only slightly more barbaric than the Great Xia people, but at least they could maintain a certain level of order and communicate. The best way to deal with these guys who popped out of nowhere was with their fists. If people were divided into lawful good, lawful neutral, and lawful evil, chaotic evil, etc., Tao Chen believed that he was lawful neutral, while these lunatics were the typical chaotic evil. Pure Metal Child tilted his head slightly, indicating that the biggest lunatic was behind him. Do it. Su Gongso, who was using the sun and moon in the palm, shouted. More than half of the remaining experts disappeared into the darkness. The remaining experts who hadn't even condensed their heaven-grade weapons stayed on the periphery, ready to stop the foreign tribes that ran out. The roar of a beast could be heard from afar. Even from afar, one could feel the ferocity of the roar. Then there was a loud boom. The Empress moved her feet and flew into the air. In a few steps she was near the village. Her eyes were red, and the darkness couldn't obstruct her vision. A 30-meter-long beast that looked like a giant rhinoceros but had an extremely long tail was charging towards a human figure that was much weaker than it. The figure didn't respond. He slid back dozens of meters, then flipped over and rushed behind the giant rhinoceros. The giant rhinoceros raised its head, opened its mouth, and spat out a mouthful of fire, lighting up half the night sky. The figure let out a painful groan and fell from the sky. He hurriedly dodged the giant rhinoceros's crazy trampling. He didn't even have time to check his injury before he flipped over and threw himself behind the giant rhinoceros. The spear in his hand smoothly stabbed into the side of the giant rhinoceros, but compared to the giant rhinoceros's size, the spear was equivalent to a toothpick. In addition, there was also a longevity celestial plane expert from the Earth and Spirit clan. With a roar, he flew up into the sky from the camp. The Empress glanced at them and could tell that this beast and the Earth and Spirit clan expert were at the intermediate level of the longevity heaven. This beast had thick skin and strong vitality. On the other hand, the Earth and Spirit clan expert already had the ability to fly in the sky. Both of them were quite difficult to deal with. However, the Earth and Spirit clan expert could run away, but this beast might not be able to. The Empress thought of something and took a step toward the Earth and Spirit clan expert. When the Earth and Spirit clan expert saw that the group of people who rushed in at night were the humans that the herdsman had mentioned before, he immediately roared and pounced down. Get lost. The burly Aboriginal man was called Xan Cho. As he roared, the sky seemed to explode with a sudden clap of thunder. The foreign races that rushed out suddenly felt pain in their ears and felt dizzy. Xan Cho's twisted and coarse mace smashed forward, and a strong wind suddenly blew within a radius of 100 meters. Unexpectedly, the Earth and Spirit clan expert didn't dodge. He blocked the mace with one hand and directly stabbed Xan Cho's chest with the other. Die. Xan Cho's muscles bulged and he didn't retreat even half a step. Just as the opponent's hand was about to grab his chest, he slightly twisted his body to avoid the attack on his heart. With a hideous smile on his face, he continued to smash the mace in his hand. Pfft. The right hand of the foreign race expert immediately pierced through Xan Cho's chest. However, Xan Cho threw away the mace in his hand and smashed into a house in front of him with Shen air. His two arms were like iron hoops as he hugged the waist of the Earth and Spirit clan expert. His face was red and his veins were bulging. It was as if he was squeezing the waist of the Earth and Spirit clan expert. The Earth and Spirit clan expert roared crazily, but he couldn't break free because they were only one level apart. The Empress descended from the sky and smashed the head of the Earth and Spirit clan expert into pieces with one palm. Then she used her fingers to cut off the arm of the Earthen Spirit Clan expert in disgust. Ha ha ha. Xan Chao's chest was pierced by an arm. He was breathing heavily, but he also let out a rather creepy laugh. The next time you die, I will find a good home for your corpse. I will put it in the stomach of a fearsome beast, the Empress said unhappily. Ha ha, I'm not dead yet. Xan Chao laughed heartily. As he slowly pulled his arm out of his chest, he spat out large mouthfuls of blood. However, just as he was about to pull his arm out, the hand suddenly moved and grabbed the side. If he hadn't sensed that something was wrong, his heart would have been grabbed out. Even so, he still managed to grab out half of his broken lung. He's not dead. The Empress was slightly stunned and then shocked. It was no wonder that this Earthen Spirit Clan expert died so quickly and didn't even have the strength to resist. Of course, there was Xan Chao's craziness, but there was also something strange about this. She saw that the Earthen Spirit Clan expert's completely broken head was gradually recovering. It crawled up from the ground and pounced towards the Empress while swaying. Immediately, the Empress kicked its upper body into pieces. The Empress frowned slightly. She saw the flesh on the half of the corpse wriggling, and the part that was completely broken by the Empress's kick actually began to grow back. In the distance, the giant rhinoceros-like beast knocked away the aboriginal expert and madly rushed towards the Empress. Every step it took caused a tremor in the ground. The Empress ignored the beast, looked at the half of the corpse and sneered, "You want to grow back? It's not that easy." She immediately stepped forward and stomped on the corpse. The half-recovered corpse immediately exploded, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The beast rushed over and first opened its mouth to spit out a stream of fire. After forcing the Empress back, it turned around and swept its long tail with a horny meat hammer, smashing Xan Chao away. The Empress suddenly felt that the vitality of this beast seemed to have decreased a little. She looked at the flesh and blood of the Earthen Spirit Clan expert. Every piece of flesh was wriggling on the ground as if they were all alive. Countless pieces of flesh and blood quickly gathered in one place. The Empress immediately guessed what was going on. However, she still felt that it was a little unbelievable. She had never encountered or even heard of such a situation before. However, these foreign races each had their own strengths. She turned her head and looked around. In the other battles, the humans had the upper hand. The furry Earthen Spirit Clan didn't seem to be good at fighting. Instead, they were better at taming beasts. In the battlefield, a few foreign races surrounded an extremely powerful beast and fought with the human experts. The Empress immediately understood that the Earthen Spirit Clan wasn't good at fighting. Although this Earthen Spirit Clan expert had an extremely strange and strong vitality and could revive even if he was smashed into pieces, the problem probably didn't lie with him. Instead, it was with the giant beast that had a slightly weaker aura. "I just need to kill a few more times and I will know," the Empress guessed. She was neither shocked nor angry and only sneered. This person's combat power was so weak. So what if he could live a few more times? It would just take a little more effort. Chapter 1171. Seeing that the gigantic beast had sent the ancient race longevity heaven expert flying, the female empress descended and punched the gigantic beast's head, producing a loud, dull sound. W. However, the empress felt a strong rebounding force from her punch, and the giant beast only roared angrily. Its body moved, and its giant head came crashing towards the empress like a moving mountain. The empress moved and barely dodged it. She frowned slightly. Although this giant beast wasn't fast, its body was extremely strong. Even though she was one level higher than it, she couldn't do anything to it in a short period of time. The empress was slightly tempted. This giant beast wasn't suitable for fighting experts, but was more suitable for killing on a large scale. The threat of such a giant beast on the battlefield was many times greater than those of the same level. If she could tame this beast, the empress looked down at the wriggling flesh and blood, and a strange look appeared in her eyes. The pile of flesh and blood crawled together and formed 3 bodies of the longevity heaven experts from the earth spirit race. Although only half of them had been formed, given enough time, perhaps 3 of them would really appear. This ability is really strange, the empress thought to herself. At this moment, several balls of flames appeared out of thin air and ignited the 3 bodies. Ma Hongyu saw this and waved her brush in the air. After Ma Hongyu broke through to the heaven and earth domain, the distance she could draw in the air was much further. Previously it was only 100 meters, but now it was close to 1,000 meters. Furthermore, its power was several times stronger. The scorching smell of the flames and human bodies was disgusting. However, the three bodies split apart and fell from the body along with the flames. The flesh and blood below continued to grow. The giant beast roared at Ma Hongyu, then covered the three corpses with its body. This is interesting. The Empress's eyes were bloodshot. She moved and punched the giant beast with her fists like heavy rain, producing a series of dull thuds. Roar! The gigantic beast was probably hurt by the Empress's beating. Its body thrashed wildly on the ground as if it wanted to knock down the Empress who was above it. Ma Hongyu, keep an eye on those three corpses. Don't destroy them and don't let them come back to life. The Empress reminded Ma Hongyu while she was dodging. Her voice echoed throughout the battlefield. Previously, she had sensed that there seemed to be a connection between this remnant body and the gigantic beast. The gigantic beast had thick skin and flesh, making this remnant body much easier to deal with. Ma Hongyu's ability was extremely suitable for destroying the body of that alien under the protection of that fierce beast. Before the Empress opened her mouth, Ma Hongyu had been paying attention to this place. In other words, Ma Hongyu was paying attention to the situation on the battlefield. Whenever she saw a situation, she would help. Ma Hongyu's ability to see through the gazes of every corner of the battlefield, as well as his methods that were hard to defend against, were completely revealed at this moment. A ferocious beast pounced on an ancient race cardinal heaven expert. The eyes of the Earth Spirit clan member flashed, and he seized the opportunity to throw the spear in his hand. However, Ma Hongyu's brush swept up a small whirlwind in the air. Dust flew in the wind, immediately blocking the Earth Spirit clan member's line of sight. Following which, a stone pillar appeared out of thin air. The humans had the absolute advantage on the battlefield. This wasn't a common occurrence, but it happened from time to time. Sometimes, a few alien races would gather together and suddenly, flames or other things would appear out of thin air and disrupt their formation. Ma Hongyu's attention would always appear where it was needed. This kind of gaze that was as sharp as a knife could cut open the entire battlefield. He was always able to take action at the right time and control the situation. Coupled with his ability, he wasn't considered strong among the experts of the longevity heaven or the heaven and earth domain. In fact, he was at the bottom. However, coupled with his accurate gaze, he was always able to play a unique role. Naturally, he had always been paying attention to the position where the Empress was. Seeing that the gigantic beast got up and frantically attacked the Empress, Ma Hongyu pondered for a moment before stretching out his brush and waving it in the air. In just a moment, more than a dozen rather ugly stray dogs with missing ears and tails rushed forward to bite the remnant body parts. The gigantic beast was furious, but it was difficult to deal with such small and numerous creatures. With a swipe of its tail, the stray dogs and the remnant body parts would probably be turned into minced meat. Just as it was hesitating, a few stray dogs actually tore a few pieces of flesh from the remnant body parts and swallowed them. These stray dogs weren't strong or fast, and they weren't even comparable to a manwheel expert. However, their teeth were extremely sharp. When Ma Hongyu was drawing, he added a sharp reflection to the teeth of the stray dogs. Half an hour later, most of the battles on the battlefield had ended. There were corpses of the alien races and flames everywhere. There was only one place where the battle hadn't stopped. The gigantic beast was still raging, but the Empress was like a mosquito to it. There was also a group of stray dogs below that took advantage of the situation to tear apart the remnant body parts that the beast was protecting. Currently, there were only 5 remnant bodies left. Under Ma Hongyu's harassment, they couldn't grow to more than half of their original size. If one were to sense carefully, they would realize that the life force of the gigantic beast was slipping away at an even faster rate. According to the plan, everyone will head to the Thousand Bone Races tribe. Be careful of the experts who will come to investigate and assist us. Rest 15 kilometers away from the Thousand Bone Races tribe until the battle ends here, the Empress said as she dodged a stream of fire in the air. This gigantic beast didn't have many means of attack. Other than relying on its tyrannical body, it could only spit fire from its mouth. After the Empress grasped its rhythm, she was able to easily lead it and was doing it with ease. Most of the people on the battlefield dispersed after hearing the Empress's command. Only a small number of people watched from afar. The remnant body parts of the gigantic beast were constantly being destroyed and regenerated. Everyone seemed to be able to vaguely hear the beast's soundless howls of anger. 4 hours later, just as the Empress had guessed, the movements of the gigantic beast were getting slower and slower. The loss of its life force had greatly affected its physical strength. Its body seemed to have shrunk a little, and its originally glossy fur had become dull. This battle seemed to be the end of its life. After another few minutes, the gigantic beast let out a mournful howl and slowly fell to the ground. The candle flame of its life was getting dimmer and dimmer. 4 of the remnant body parts had stopped growing and were rapidly decaying. Finally they turned into a pool of blood. Only one body was left, and it was still struggling to fight for its last chance of survival. The brush in Ma Hongyu's hand had already stopped and his breathing was slightly weak. In fact, he didn't consume much energy. The Empress looked at the wriggling mass of flesh and blood. Its organs, upper body, neck and head grew. Finally, it became an extremely old foreign race member. This seemed to have consumed the last of its energy. When all of this was completed, it fell to the ground and looked at the surrounding tribe that had been turned into ruins with eyes filled with anger and sorrow. Finally, it fixed its gaze on the Empress. With a strange tone that was filled with the deepest malice and resentment, it said, "Sinners, God will punish you. If your God really existed, you wouldn't have ended up like this," the Empress sneered. Dayo had no god and only believed in ancestral spirits. However, there were legends about the existence of gods in Great Xia. The Empress had come into contact with myths and legends on Earth, so she wasn't unfamiliar with them. God will punish you, God will punish you, God will punish you. The remaining foreign race member continued to curse viciously, as if he was cursing a village woman. Seeing him like this, the Empress gradually lost interest. Previously, she spared his life because she wanted to see if this foreign race member had any other tricks up his sleeves. Previously, this foreign race member shared life with the gigantic beast, which had piqued her interest. Now it seemed like there wasn't any. Immediately, she smashed her fist into the air. The foreign race member didn't resist and immediately turned into a pile of flesh and blood. This time it didn't continue to grow. Chapter 1172. Look around and see if there's anything valuable. The Empress glanced at the remaining people. She looked down at the foreign being and saw that he had already become minced meat. All his belongings were destroyed in the battle just now. The Empress took a step forward and stood in the air. She looked around and headed straight for the largest house. Although the Earth Spirit's combat power wasn't high, he had some unexpected tricks up his sleeve. This was the ability to share life force with the giant beast. As long as the giant beast still had life force, it could survive even if it was beaten into minced meat. It could even split into several parts. If it weren't for the fact that the human race had the upper hand from the very beginning and had confined him to a small area, his strange ability might have caused some trouble for them. The Empress thought about it further. If she had this method in future battles with the foreign races, she could share life force with some soldiers and increase their combat power greatly. A wound on a vital part could take a human's life. However, this foreign being didn't have any vital parts. Its only weakness was that it consumed the life force of the giant beast to regrow its flesh. Before it regained its flesh, it was almost defenseless. Just like this foreign being, it didn't have a chance to recover from the beginning. However, this wasn't considered a weakness. If it were someone else, they would have died long ago. It would be extremely difficult to deal with an enemy like this on the battlefield. However, this special ability had extremely high requirements. Otherwise, he wouldn't be the only one in this tribe to have it. If it could be widely used, this mid-tier race with low combat power wouldn't be able to keep this special ability. However, they had to try and maybe find a way. Even if they couldn't, it would be good to learn something useful from it. In the past, this world didn't have planes, but they did now. After a while, the Empress took out a bag with all the animal skin booklets inside. What surprised her was that the alien race spoke the human language but used a different language. She had no idea what she had found inside. After she walked out, the house immediately collapsed, becoming the last piece of the puzzle in the ruins. The Empress turned to look at Xianqiu. Although most of the flesh had grown out of the hole in his chest, the injury to his lungs wasn't so easy to heal. Without a lung, his strength would be greatly reduced in the future. Return to the Wall of Two Worlds and walk 300 kilometers to the west. The humans will send you back to Dayo. You might be able to recover from your injuries, the Empress said coldly. There were more than 130 Cardinal Heaven and Spirit Wheel experts, including 9 from Longevity Heaven and Heaven Opening Domain. They had launched a surprise attack on a tribe that only had 2 Longevity Heaven experts and more than 20 Cardinal Heaven experts. Yet, one of them was seriously injured, which made the Empress rather unhappy. It can be cured? Xianqiu grinned with his mouth that was filled with the smell of blood. It seemed that the injury to his lungs did not bother him too much. When we return, listen to the regent. Don't act recklessly or you will be killed, the Empress said coldly. This Cho was truly unbridled. Back when he was in the Cardinal Heaven realm he was already quite wild. Now that he was in the Longevity Heaven realm, not only did he not restrain himself, he was even more unbridled. It had nothing to do with his personality, nor was he intentionally arrogant or relying on his strength. Instead, most of the aboriginals in the depths of the 60,000 mountains were like this. Or rather, most of the aboriginals in the depths of the 60,000 mountains were like this. His entire body was filled with a ferocious and violent aura. Otherwise, he wouldn't have risked his life to fight the middle-level Longevity Heaven expert head-on. She could suppress him here, but if he returned to Dayo, given his violent temperament, he might cause some trouble. Therefore, the Empress specially warned him. Remember my words. If you cause any trouble, I will destroy your entire village. The Empress glanced at him coldly. Her sharp gaze made Xan Chao's skin feel as if it was being cut by a knife, but he didn't care much. The distance between the two foreign tribes was more than 250 kilometers. Even a Cardinal Heaven expert would need at least 4 to 6 hours to get there. If he conserved his strength he would need at least 10 hours to get there. The Empress caught up with them halfway through the journey, and it was already close to noon. Xen, there's someone ahead about 25 kilometers away, Dongwasun suddenly said. Everyone immediately slowed down without the slightest doubt, even though it was difficult for Ma Hongyu and the other heaven-opening domain experts to detect them. However, Dongwasun was proficient in spying and assassination, and everyone knew that he had the ability to locate enemies from afar. About 100 people. Dongwasun, who looked like a young man in trousers, sniffled and said, Tao is brought by the wind from afar. The Empress turned her head and looked around. On one side was the Wall of Two Worlds, which was more than 3,000 meters tall, and on the other side was the land of fire poison that was difficult to see with one's eyes. It seems that the Qianggu tribe has really come to help. Let's wait for them here and wait for them. Ma Hongyu laughed. The Empress nodded and said, All right. There were less than 100 people from the foreign tribes, and there were only 3 Longevity Heaven experts in the Qianggu tribe. Without one of them there were at most 2 of them which posed no threat to them. 5 minutes later, Dongwasun suddenly exclaimed, raised his eyebrows and said, They have stopped. They are heading back very quickly. Have they discovered us? Dongwasun couldn't figure out how the other party had discovered them. However, the foreign tribes were strange and he had just seen a monster that could regrow itself after being smashed into pieces. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the other party had extraordinary abilities. Chase after them. The Empress didn't hesitate at all. After a while they caught up with the Qianggu tribe. Before they arrived, the Qianggu tribe had actually stopped and formed a formation. There were 4 rows of 22 people behind them, and the remaining 12 people were divided into 2 rows, with only 2 people standing at the front. This formation made everyone even more certain that the other party had already discovered their movements. The Qianggu tribe looked similar to humans, except that their faces and limbs were long and thin. There were bone spurs on their backs and there was a pair of short daggers in each of their hands. The weaker the strength of the Qianggu tribe, the paler their bone spurs were. They had a metallic luster on them. The 2 Longevity Heaven experts' bone spurs were like dark metals, and they were black with a glossy luster. Leave 50 people behind. The rest go to the Qianggu tribe and don't let them escape, the Empress said without hesitation when she saw the enemies forming a formation. Since the other party could discover them in advance, they must have already sent a message back. As if they understood the Empress's words, the Qianggu tribe, which had already formed a formation, immediately let out a commotion. Go! An expert of the Qianggu tribe shouted. Kill! The Empress ordered coldly. Kill! The expert of the Qianggu tribe shouted. Many of the Qianggu tribe suddenly changed their formation, turned around and faced their opponents with their backs. Before they could react, the bone spurs on the backs of half of the Qianggu tribe suddenly detached from their bodies and shot toward them like arrows, covering most of them. Following this, the 4 rows of foreign races changed positions, and another batch of bone spurs shot over. That night, Renbaqian found out that the 2 tribes had been annihilated. Apart from Xancho, 2 more people from the Qianggu tribe died, and more than 10 people were injured by the bone spurs. The combat strength of the Qianggu tribe was slightly higher than that of the Earth Spirit tribe, but the most troublesome thing was their bone spurs. They were extremely fast, even faster than bullets, and extremely sharp. They shot over from all directions, and there were also some bone spurs from the Cardinal Heaven level Qianggu tribe. If they were not careful they would be injured. Furthermore, the Qianggu tribe was able to turn most of their bones into arrows before they died. If both parties were at the same level of strength, they would be shocked to encounter such a scene. The two experts who died were killed by them in this way. This made the Empress more vigilant. These mid-level Qianggu tribe members were already so difficult to deal with. She wondered how powerful the 36-strong Qianggu tribe members were. Although these two tribes weren't very powerful, they each had their own unique characteristics. For example, the Earth Spirit tribe's most powerful technique was their ability to coexist with ferocious beasts. If the Earth Spirit tribe and the ferocious beasts were entangled in front, the Qianggu tribe would probably suffer even more casualties if they attacked from afar. The Empress guessed that this was the reason why these two foreign races were guarding the wall of the two realm. Fortunately, with the elite strength of the human race, they were able to annihilate the two races separately with a crushing force. It was still relatively easy. If the army had encountered these two races in battle, they would probably have to be very distracted. Chapter 1173. After the Empress hung up, she suddenly said, "I'll go back in 2 days." Rinpoche was subconsciously shocked. Could it be that she still remembered that matter until now? Was she really going to come back from the wall of the two worlds to bite him? That couldn't be. "Your Majesty, do you miss me?" Rinpoche probed. Without waiting for the Empress to answer, he continued, "I miss you too." The Empress's mouth twitched and the words, "I want to bite you to death," were stuck in her throat. He didn't give her a chance to say them. "I'll go to Qing Valley to pick you up," Rinpoche said. "There's no need. Prepare a plane for me." The Empress hung up the phone after saying that. She pulled up her red muslin and saw a green mark that looked like an eye on her arm. The mark was on her arm, but it was covered by her sleeve. She didn't notice when it appeared. When she was on her way to the Thousand Bone tribe, she accidentally found this mark on her arm. After thinking about it, she guessed that it was most likely left behind by that expert from the Earth Spirit race. Before he died, he kept muttering, "God will punish you." She thought that it was his resentment before he died, but when she found this mark on her arm, her first thought was that it was his doing. It was quite strange that she didn't notice it at all. Although she didn't know what it was for, she guessed that it had something to do with the God that the Earth Spirit race had mentioned. God? There are no gods in this world. Even if there are, they aren't humans. The Empress looked at the mark on her arm and sneered. She rubbed her skin with her hand and couldn't feel anything. She put down her sleeve. However, she couldn't do anything about it. The Earth Spirit race wasn't very strong, but there must be something special about them to be able to become a medium-sized race. Therefore, the Empress planned to go back and ask Rinpoche to bring her back to Earth to see if he could remove the mark on her arm. Previously, Rinpoche could directly bring other people's heaven-grade weapons back to Earth and cut off contact with their original owners. This might be a solution. Somewhere in this world, within a mountain range, there was an endless chain of altars, distributed on the peak of every mountain. On each altar was a stone statue that was 100 meters tall. The stone statue looked down slightly as if it was overlooking the Earth Spirit race and the beasts walking at the bottom of the mountain. "Great Elder, one of our tribes has disappeared." An Earth Spirit wearing a crown studded with green gems walked in from a divine hall halfway up a mountain. "Which tribe?" An Earth Spirit clan elder wearing a necklace made of jade beads around his neck said in a deep voice in the hall. "It seems to be a tribe that split off a few thousand years ago. Their token is broken. Can you find the direction?" There has been no news of them for thousands of years, and the token suddenly shattered just now. "Great Elder, could it be the doing of the upper 36 clans? They have an agreement with us." The old man of the Earth Spirit clan remained silent for several breaths before he said, "Ask people to prepare the sacrificial offerings. Inform the deities of this matter in 10 days. The Black Sky God will definitely guide us and bring disaster to our enemies. No one can slaughter the people of the Black Sky God without being punished." 10 days later, offerings were placed on countless altars in the mountains. Countless Earth Spirits with one or more agate necklaces were kneeling in front of the altars, chanting all kinds of praises. Then, countless Earth Spirits formed a circle in front of the altars and danced. "Black Sky God, your people and descendants offer you endless piety and respect. Please guide us to find the murderers who slaughtered your people. Please guide us to bring endless disaster to our enemies." This kind of ceremony lasted for an entire day. Suddenly, a stone statue opened its mouth and spat out a black gem. "The Black Sky God has responded to us." The cheers suddenly spread from one mountain to another and then into the distance. All the mountains were in an uproar. The next day the great elder threw the black gem to an earth spirit wearing a crown. The enemies are in the northeast. This divine stone will guide you to find them and defeat them. Yes, great elder. How many people should I bring? The enemies are far away. Bring a group of warriors, and 5 giant beasts of disaster. I will inform the 36 clans. 3 days later, countless earth spirit warriors riding wild beasts galloped out of the mountains. The mountains trembled as they galloped. Behind the countless warriors of the earth spirit clan were 5 terrifying beasts that looked like moving mountains. In Daio's imperial court, Rinpoche asked the guards to bring in boxes and place them in the hands of every minister. These are? Great Elder Shirqing opened the lid and immediately saw a total of 12 bottles inside. Each bottle contained a crystal that was the size of 2 fingers. Are these crystals? Tong Jingye used a small wooden clip in the box to pick out a crystal from the glass bottle. Immediately, an extremely abundant vitality rushed straight to his face. Tong Jingye took a few deep breaths, and his face revealed a satisfied expression as his body trembled. What a comfortable feeling. Tong Jingye murmured. Is this the environment outside the wall of the 2 realms like this? I want to resign and follow in Her Majesty's footsteps. Let's go. I won't send you off. I find you an eyesore. Qin Chuan's gloomy voice sounded from the side. Most of the people in the imperial court took out a crystal from the bottle. After feeling the abundant vitality emitted from it, they were quite satisfied and put it back into the bottle. Everyone was careful because this thing wasn't easy to obtain. They had waited for more than a year for this. Is this all? Tuan asked. It's too little. Also, why do I see more crystals from Great Elder and Young Elder than me? This was what most people were thinking. There were indeed too few crystals in the hands of everyone. According to what Rinpoche had said before, these crystals would only last for less than 2 months. After all, the number of crystals is limited, and it's impossible to supply them in large quantities. The 2 elders will each receive 12 crystals. The 6 ministers will each receive 11 crystals, the 24 ministers will each receive 10 crystals, and the deputy ministers will each receive 9 crystals, Rinpoche explained. In addition, the protectors of the 5 protectorates will each receive 11 crystals, and the deputy protectors will each receive 10 crystals. There are also some Cardinal Heaven experts who aren't officials but aren't Cardinal Heaven experts will each receive 5 crystals. There were less than 3,000 level 4 crystals in total. Using this method, more than 700 crystals were distributed at one time. These level 4 crystals could only be distributed 4 times at most, which was 2 years' time. As for whether it wasn't enough, everyone would have to think of a solution themselves. The ores that were sent back were only made into these crystals? Tuan was puzzled. There were a lot of ores sent back and everyone was paying attention to them. However, the amount produced was too little. This is part of it. This type of crystal was a 4th grade crystal. Below them are level 5 crystals. Rinpoche asked the guards to bring everyone a bottle containing a level 5 crystal. There are a total of 10,000 of these level 5 crystals. I will reward a portion of them to those who have made great contributions to the imperial court, regardless of their level of cultivation. Rinpoche smiled. For example, the people from the academy have made great contributions to the imperial court over the years. The changes in Daio today are inseparable from them. I believe that all of you won't deny this, right? In addition to them, there are also some officials from various ministries who have made great contributions to the imperial court. The examination office has a tally of these people. Although the imperial court has already given them rewards, these crystals are another form of favor and recognition from the imperial court. Everyone nodded slightly as they couldn't find fault with this point. In addition, I want to hold a martial arts competition to select human elites who will be rewarded for training. I will also take out a portion of the crystals as the prizes for this competition. Can I participate? Qin Chuan suddenly asked. It wasn't just him. Many people in the imperial court also looked tempted. Rinpoche really wanted to ask if they were shameless. Cough, no, there is an age limit this time. We want to select young people with potential, especially those who don't have official positions and are wandering outside. If you have a capable nephew, you can let them participate, Rinpoche said with a sullen face. Finally, I will take out 5,000 crystals and sell them in the market. The money will be used to subsidize the investment in the south. Seeing that Rinpoche had arranged everything clearly, everyone was speechless. However, there was one more thing that Rinpoche didn't mention. There were still more than 800 level 3 crystals. If he did, these people would definitely be skinned alive. He was going to use them to reward those who had made great contributions in the future. Chapter 1174. In the lecture hall of the Black Bamboo Academy. Looking at the students sitting below with bright eyes, Rinpoche felt a sense of satisfaction. These young people were the future of this world and the fruits of his hard work over the years. There were Aboriginals, Jing tribe, and people from the Yin Nation. As time went on, the number of people in these two areas increased. Rinpoche stood on the stage with a smile and spoke in a heavy voice. Knowledge is power. The fist is only the power of the physical body, but it can't move the world, while knowledge can. Armor can arm your body, but knowledge can arm your mind. The power of the physical body is only a narrow range, but the mind allows you to get close to the truth of the world through your knowledge, thereby becoming stronger and having a wider range of power. The power of the physical body brings destruction and ruins, while the power of knowledge brings prosperity and civilization, creation and value. Look at the capital today, look at this city, and think about the places you used to live and go. All of this is brought about by knowledge. Trains, cars, airplanes, electric lights, telephones and projections. These are the values created by knowledge. The essence of knowledge is the changes we bring to this world when we understand the various phenomena of this world and search for the essence of the world. The Academy Award was created to reward those students who have made contributions in academia and realized their value in creation. You have brought a better side to this world. After finishing his speech and listening to the applause of the students below, Rinpoche paused for a moment before continuing. The Academy Award will be held annually in the future to reward those who have made outstanding contributions. Now, the award for the best industrial design of the year, research on the control method of an aero engine based on the Lyapunov function, by Shiryu. Tong Lan and Shirgan's expressions changed slightly as they looked at a girl in the same row. They didn't expect her to be the first winner of the Academy Award. A delicate and pretty girl in her 20s looked at Rinpoche in surprise and couldn't react for a moment. Don't just stand there. Go up. Su Peng poked her shoulder from behind. You will forever be remembered in the history of the Black Bamboo Academy, and your photo will be hung in the Hall of Fame. Rinpoche smiled. The Academy is proud of you. After Shiryu recovered from his shock, he ran up to the stage and heard those words. His eyes reddened and he almost cried. As a commoner student, he had gone from being illiterate to being the only commoner student in the bachelor's class. He had gone through a lot of hardships and temptations. The other commoner students had long since joined the workforce, and many of them had even become 6th or 5th rank officials in the Ministry of Works. They had long since improved their family situation. She was the only one who persisted and devoted herself to endless study and research. Many times she had thought of leaving the academy and working in various departments. Her family situation would be much better. It was just that she preferred the atmosphere in the academy and the process of constantly learning new knowledge. This sudden award made her feel that everything she had done before was worth it. He then picked up a box from the side and opened it to reveal a bottle. This was 50 crystals. The students below immediately revealed looks of envy, and the applause became even more intense. These days the news of origin crystals had already spread out. Or rather, it could be said that under Rinpoche's push, the news spread to everyone through the newspapers and other news channels. No one could ignore the value of origin crystals. It could increase the speed of cultivation. Just this alone was enough to make countless people go crazy. This was especially true for people who weren't Aboriginals. Before reaching the cardinal heaven level, origin crystals were valuable to the Aboriginals, but food with sufficient energy was more valuable. However, for the warriors of the Jing tribe and the Yin Nation, origin crystals could be absorbed into the body and transformed into essence chi along with the blood essence, speeding up the speed of cultivation. For the warriors who had reached the earth embryo realm and began to interact with the outside world, this speed was greatly accelerated. It could even help increase the chances of breaking through the path to heaven. For the spirit and cardinal heaven level warriors, origin crystals were even more useful. Under such circumstances, how could the world not go crazy? However, origin crystals were currently only in the hands of a few people. Only the court officials who had reached the cardinal heaven level had a small amount of them. In the outside world, the price of origin crystals had already skyrocketed. Even level 5 origin crystals were the same. A level 5 origin crystal was equivalent to 100 taels of gold. These 50 origin crystals were equivalent to 5,000 taels of gold and 50,000 taels of silver. Coupled with entering the Academy's Hall of Fame, as long as one's name was recorded in history, how could the students not be envious? Thank you, thank you. Shiryu choked with sobs. You deserve it. Rinpoche smiled. The reason why this award was held in such a high-profile manner was partly to commend the students, but most importantly, it was to stimulate the enthusiasm of the students. As for whether Shiryu would get into trouble for possessing these origin crystals, Rinpoche believed that no one in the capital would dare to target the students of the academy. As for whether Shiryu would sell them, this was for sure because these origin crystals weren't very valuable to her. Shiryu's talent could only be considered average. Besides, it would be better for the aboriginals to exchange the origin crystals for Earth-level beast meat. Furthermore, her family's situation would also improve. After all, Shiryu came from an ordinary family and wasn't well off. In addition, Rinpoche wanted to inflate the price of the origin crystals so that he could release the remaining few thousand origin crystals. Shiryu was just the beginning. Next is the Best Scientific and Technological Progress Award of the Year, some expansion of the hydrodynamic equation around the flow problem, Aerodynamic Research Group. This time it was a group of 4 people who were 1 year younger than Tonglan and the others. The 4 of them smiled very brightly. Although the origin crystals were very valuable to them, it was far less meaningful than the recognition of their research. After the 4 of them left, 2 more awards were handed out and it was time for the highlight. Next is the Most Valuable Award of the Year, Giant Automatic Circulation Control Calculator, Electric Machinery Group's Ancient Crystal, Ancient Water, and Xiong'en. Rinpoche announced loudly with a smile on his face. That's right, this was the biggest surprise he had recently received. The so-called Giant Automatic Circulation Control Calculator could actually be called a relay calculator. This was a real computer, the prototype of a modern computer. Although the researchers had done research on this and made much faster progress than the students, the researchers were all scientists that Rinpoche had abducted from various countries, and computers had long been integrated into their lives. They had sufficient understanding and cognition of computers, so Rinpoche placed the most important part in the research institute. However, the students of the academy were different. They didn't know much about computers and didn't even have a concept of them. It was just that a few of the students wanted to solve the large amount of data involved in their studies and research. As a result, they wanted to design a device that allowed them to be lazy. Although the giant calculator had a very slow speed of operation, only being able to perform addition and subtraction 4 times in 1 second and multiplication and division every 10 seconds, it could be said to be very primitive and slow. However, this couldn't hide the brilliance of wisdom that it was full of. From a certain perspective, lazy people could change the world. First, set a small goal such as 1 second. Remember, Scholar House. Chapter 1175. After the Black Bamboo Academy Awards, it was time to reward the mid-level and low-level officials who had made outstanding contributions. For example, the officials from the Department of Commerce who had made great contributions to the promotion of the Jinkala fertilizer. The officials from the Public Order Bureau who had made great contributions to stopping the theft, robbery, of manhole covers. The officials from the Department of Transportation who had improved the situation of violent car racing on the highway from Lan City to Chuyan Prefecture. The supervisors who had strictly enforced the safety of the mines and ensured that there hadn't been any major casualties for 3 consecutive years. The names of a batch of low-level officials who weren't well known and didn't have high strength, but had performed well in their posts were published in the newspapers. And the prizes were all origin crystals. After the Black Bamboo Academy and the large-scale awards, the enthusiasm of the students and officials was fully aroused, and the enthusiasm of the market was also aroused. In particular, some crystals entered the market and were instantly placed on the desks of many officials, aristocratic families, and the upper echelons of the chambers of commerce. After confirming the effects of the crystals and their abundant vitality, even though the vitality released was limited and could only be used for a short period of time, it was still wildly sought after by the entire market. 1 crystal cost 100 taels of gold and could only be used for 1 day. However, it was extremely cost-effective for breaking through to the next level. For some people, money was never the most important issue. Seeing the popularity of the market, even some officials were tempted and wondered if they should sell a few of the level 4 crystals they had. At this time, Rinpoche put the remaining 5,000 crystals into the market. After limiting the number of individual purchases, they were sold out in just half a day, earning a huge income of 5 million taels of silver, which was used to increase the investment in the 60,000 mountains. If there were enough crystals, Rinpoche believed that even if the price was reduced to half today, the sales alone would be enough to maintain the rapid development of technological products and the construction of public facilities in Dayo. What is the soul? What is the spirit? What is the divine sense? This is the greatest mystery of mankind. On Earth, from religion to science, countless people have been guessing and searching, but there has never been a real conclusion. However, this world is different. The existence of the divine sense gives us the possibility to explore. Although the concept of the divine sense in this world has always been difficult for me to understand, I have asked many people, especially those who carry swords on their backs, and they seem to have mixed it up. However, in my opinion, this isn't the case. The divine sense, which I find very strange in this world, has a unique characteristic. His divine sense could actually interact with the external world, allowing him to become even stronger. Moreover, the divine sense was actually visible, touchable, and materialized. What was divine sense? Was it a soul? Why could it interact with the world? How could he condense a divine weapon? Your Highness, boss, you have to know that this is a real miracle. In the interaction between the divine sense and the outside world, what kind of process takes place that causes matter to appear? Your Highness, divine sense is what we need to study the most. This is God's domain. Thinking of this, my heart was about to jump out of my chest. I need research subjects. He fell into deep thought as he listened to the long-winded narration of the big-nosed woman. Not only did they want to know the answer to this question, but he also wanted to know the answer. In fact, he had a certain understanding of the soul, spirit, and divine sense. The way he saw it, the soul was the carrier of the spirit, the existence of a person. Spirit, on the other hand, was the fluctuation of the soul. It was a process of one's thoughts and perception. However, divine sense was different from the other two. The soul consciousness was the method and means for the soul to perceive everything. It was the hands and feet of the soul, and it was the extroversion of the soul. This distinction was very subtle and easy to confuse. He didn't know if he was right. In fact, he was very interested in this research and had this idea for a long time. It was just that he didn't have the ability, the time, or the appropriate tools for observation and detection. Now that vitality had been discovered and some tools could be made, it was time to start research in this area. Although most of the experts who had condensed a divine weapon had gone to the Lansang territory to fight against the foreign races, there were still a few suitable candidates. You can leave first. I will consider this matter. Rinpoche waved his hand. After thinking for a while, he contacted Li Yuanzhu and invited her to the capital. On one hand, it was to discuss the youth competition. Without her, it would be difficult to expand the scope to Great Xia. On the other hand, it was to use the Yuan crystals. After all, Li Yuanzhu had to stay in Great Xia to guard the internal affairs. Otherwise, she would have already become a heaven and earth region expert. As a top genius who wasn't inferior to the empress, she was more important than the ministers in the imperial court. Finally, she was invited to participate in some research work. Well, to be studied. Moreover, there was Lin Yu by her side. Her mind and body were seriously out of line, and the Wi-Fi signal for her mind was intermittent. Presumably, she would make outstanding and unparalleled contributions to the research work. There was a radio station at Li Yuanzhu's place and a person who specialized in receiving information from the radio station. It didn't take long for her to receive a definite reply. Of course, she still didn't know what the so-called research work was. After finishing this, he got someone to inform Honeysuckle and the ministers in the imperial court. He also got someone to wake up Lin Xiaola, who had been sleeping for decades, and prepared to make a trip to the Yin residence. Wang Jing. He only brought a team of guards and Lin Xiaola with him. Now that he was at the Earth Embryo realm, he had enough ability to protect himself. There weren't many experts left in either Great Xia or the Yin nation. An hour later he got on a plane to Wangjing. This wasn't a mature route, and even the airport in Wangjing was very simple. Other than a low brick building outside the city, there were only 2 runways that had just been repaired. Everyone boarded the plane with a parachute and was ready to jump at any time. Fortunately, there weren't any problems along the way except for the terrible flight experience. 5 hours later, Rinpoche felt like his body was about to fall apart. He swayed his body parts as he boarded the car to welcome the team. It was already afternoon, and he first went to the palace of the Yun nation. This was his first time here. The remaining eunuchs were guarding this huge building complex. The dilapidated buildings had been lacking maintenance for more than a decade. From time to time they would see dust and lifeless palaces. All of this indicated that the Yun nation had long been swept clean of history. Early the next morning, Renbachin went to the seaside and looked at the two giant steel ships docked near the huge dock. The so-called giant steel ships were just two steam ships that were about 140 meters long, 13 meters wide, and had a displacement of 3,400 tons. They were powered by two diesel engines with a power of 72,000 horsepower. In terms of size, they were far inferior to the Titanic, which sank during its first voyage in the early 20th century. That cruise ship, which sailed in 1912, was 269 meters long and had a displacement of 66,000 tons. However, compared to this world where humans were limited to a range of 1,000 meters from the coast, where the maritime industry was extremely undeveloped and the exploration rate of the ocean was extremely low, these two ships could already be considered behemoths. They were also the most advanced ships. Even though it was early in the morning, there were many people near the dock talking about the two giant steel ships in the distance. This popularity hadn't stopped for the past month. Previously, trains and cars, which were made of steel and didn't require animal power to run, had already shocked the people of the Yun nation. Now even the ships were made of steel. Just like the history on Earth, the most discussed topic was why the steel ships didn't sink and how they could move without sails and oars. First, set a small goal such as 1 second. Chapter 1176. Your Highness. A row of aboriginals in neat leather armor greeted him respectfully. Guangxia Literature Network. Renbachin nodded with a smile and looked at the short and strong young man at the front of the group. He seemed to have thought of something and his eyes were filled with reverie. He smiled and asked, "One Piece, Principal?" The young man smiled sheepishly. This young man was Chao Zhong, the freshman who almost dropped out of school after watching One Piece. More than 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Renbachin lamented as if he could still vaguely see the scene of that young man standing in front of him and saying that he wanted to drop out of school. Although his great dream of dropping out of school to become a pirate king didn't come true, it planted a seed in his heart. Now that seed had finally taken root and sprouted. After learning that the imperial court wanted to build steel ships to explore the sea, he volunteered to join. Introduce them. Renbachin smiled. Yes. This is the Conqueror and that's the Conqueror. It's 142 meters long, 12.9 meters wide, 3,380 tons of displacement, 3,760 tons of full load, 19 knots of speed. It can carry 122 people. It has a top speed of 19 knots, a range of 12 knots and can last up to 30 days. As he listened to Chao Zhong, Renbachin walked closer and reached out to touch the steel shell of the Conqueror. It was cold to the touch and had a little fishy smell. After boarding the ship along the gangway, the view in front of them suddenly widened. The blue ocean extended to the end of their line of sight and gradually turned black. How much do we understand about the troposphere now? Renbachin asked as he looked into the distance. The troposphere was a sharp blade in this world's ocean and also a barrier that blocked the footsteps of humans and confined them firmly on land. The troposphere generally appeared a few kilometers to tens of thousands of meters away from the coast. From the outside there seemed to be no trace of it at all. However, a few meters below the surface of the sea was full of chaotic and turbulent undercurrents, as if countless hands were tearing at it. Ships that entered the troposphere were almost unable to escape. Even steel-hulled steamships would find it difficult to escape if they were caught in it. Needless to say, there were countless strange marine creatures in the troposphere, which were also a great danger to ships. The observatory's research institute has placed observation devices underwater several times. Although they soon lost contact with the strange water, it didn't mean that they didn't discover anything. I don't know what the undercurrent in the troposphere contains, but it has a slight effect on the signal. Also, the undercurrent is very fast. In a short time, the observation device will be swept to a place where the signal can't reach. Under the ocean there seems to be something affecting the water flow. We found many whirlpools underwater, which is an important reason for the formation of the undercurrent. The ocean is very deep, and there seems to be a huge crack under the water 10,000 meters away, as if it was cut by a sharp axe. At present, we don't know the extent of the troposphere. The detection range on the surface of the sea has exceeded 300 kilometers, but it still hasn't broken through the troposphere. Moreover, there are turbulent undercurrents in the air above the sea beyond 300 kilometers, and some extreme weather often occurs. The observation station has sent several drones to explore the outer area, but they were destroyed beyond 300 kilometers. Rinpoche had already understood most of the situation, but he still wanted to hear more from Chao Zhong. "Let's go and take a look. Let me see how good you guys are," Rinpoche said. "Yes." Chao Zhong proudly ordered everyone to prepare. "Have all of you learned how to swim?" Rinpoche suddenly asked with a smile. Chao Zhong's expression froze for a moment before he embarrassedly said, "I suffered a lot in order to learn how to swim." Most of the aboriginals were landlubbers and had the temperament of a steelyard. They sank to the bottom once they entered the water. It was fine if they were close to the shore as they could stabilize their bodies and walk out of the water. Otherwise they would die. This batch of marine pioneers suffered a lot on this and drank a lot of seawater. Not long after, the conqueror sounded its whistle. "It's actually moving. Tsk, it can actually move without sails and oars. Relying on the waves. It's all thanks to the waves." Many onlookers on the shore were surprised to see the ironclad warship, which had been docked for a few days, suddenly moving. The ship didn't go too far, only about 9 kilometers away. When they turned back they could still see the shore, so the ship stopped. At this time, the ocean had already taken on a dark blue color, and a little further ahead, the ocean had already turned black. "Your Highness, the troposphere is just ahead." Rinpoche nodded and stared at the surface of the ocean in front of him. Apart from the change in color, he didn't see much difference. Although there were waves on the surface of the ocean, it seemed relatively calm. "Release the marker," Rinpoche instructed. "Get ready to release the marker," Chao Zhong immediately shouted. A moment later, a red wooden ball with a diameter of 2 meters was released from the ship. This wood was very dense and didn't reach the bottom of the water after being thrown into the water. Soon Rinpoche saw that the ocean seemed to be enraged. Although there weren't many changes on the surface, the wooden ball under the water began to move rapidly and irregularly at a high speed. This was the effect of the undercurrent under the water. In just a moment, the wooden ball suddenly shattered as if it had been hit by a heavy hammer. It turned into countless pieces of wood that continued to float in the water. This was the power of the undercurrent. Under the power of countless undercurrents, it could even deform steel. Huge waves suddenly appeared on the surface of the ocean, and a huge object suddenly emerged from the water. It looked like an octopus tentacle that extended more than 30 meters out of the water. It twisted and swayed on the surface of the water, and there was a huge mouth full of sharp teeth at the top. "This kind of piece of firewood is everywhere under the water," Chao Zhong said. "My strength isn't particularly strong, but there are too many of them." This wasn't a tentacle of a huge monster, but its body looked like this. After finishing his sentence, he picked up a bow from the side, drew it and knocked an arrow. An arrow pierced through the air and pierced the swaying tentacle, immediately creating a big hole. Blue blood sprayed everywhere. The surface of the sea suddenly churned, and the tentacle frantically slapped in all directions. Even a big hole wasn't considered fatal to this kind of creature. Compared to its body size under the water, the body size of this huge monster on the surface only took up 1/3 of its body size. A piece of firewood? Rinpoche turned his head doubtfully. This name sounded awkward no matter how he listened to it. "Hey, this is what we call them in private. The people at the observatory call them heterogeneous leeches." Chao Zhong laughed. "Are there many of these things under the water?" "Yes, they are everywhere. With such a body size they should need a lot of food, right? Do they have so much food?" "There are more marine life under the water than expected, especially those undercurrents. Although they are turbulent, they also suck in a large number of fish from afar. How do these things not get torn apart by the undercurrents under the water?" Rinpoche listened to Chao Zhong's explanation and nodded gently from time to time. He looked into the distance and sighed. It seemed like there was still a long way to go to solve the mystery of the ocean. However, this wasn't the most important thing. At present, the most important thing was to find a route along the coastline. As for whether they could achieve their goal, no one knew now. Although the ocean looked very deep, there was a troposphere outside and a coastline inside. There was only such a curved path for ships to pass through, and no one knew if they would get stuck by a submerged reef somewhere. Fupin Chinese. Chapter 1177. Rinpoche didn't stay long in Wangjing. He stayed for 2 days to understand the situation before returning. He also left behind a batch of new detection equipment that he brought back from Earth. There was a mosquito-sized flying detector with a detection range of more than 10 kilometers and an underwater detector with a detection range of 5 kilometers. These two new equipment would increase their chances of success in this exploration. Yu Qing ran away again? Rinpochen returned to the palace and shook his head when he heard the news. Hua was getting older, so Rinpochen couldn't keep calling her by her nickname. Although he paid attention to her from time to time, he didn't discipline her too much. As long as she passed the curriculum, she could do whatever she wanted. Hua was straightforward and chivalrous. Although she grew up in the palace, she had strong habits of the pugilistic world. She liked to wield weapons and make friends, but she didn't like politics. After all, this world was completely different from Earth. Rinpochen didn't expect her to put much effort into politics. Moreover, with the Empress's strength, she would live for at least 300 years, and it was unknown whether Hua would inherit the throne. If she put too much effort into politics, she might really cause trouble in the future. This was something Rinpochen didn't want to see, so he didn't force her when he saw that she didn't like it. At this time, Hua didn't know that her father was back. She was calling her friends in the Shanhui restaurant, banging on the table and singing. Hua's 5 notes wasn't complete. Although her voice was good, it was a different matter when she sang it. Fortunately, with everyone around, it didn't stand out and was very lively. "Monk, let's form a band, shall we?" Hua was a little tipsy as she pulled Xingrua aside and muttered, "The princess is drunk." Xingrua chuckled. "I'm not drunk. I've been thinking about it for a long time. Let's form a heavy metal rock band and you will be the lead singer." Hua patted Xingrua's shoulder and laughed heartily. Xingrua was stunned for a long time and laughed bitterly. She couldn't imagine what it would be like for a monk to sing heavy metal rock. Although the group of foreigners had been sent away, Xingrua's experience during that period put her in a predicament. She couldn't clear the spiritual purification platform and didn't know where to go. She would come here from time to drink with Hua. Even though the surroundings were lively, she felt much more peaceful and stayed in the capital. She didn't expect the princess to suddenly make such a suggestion. Honeysuckle didn't mind Xingrua's rejection again. Instead, he put one arm on the table and smiled like a flower. No one knew what fun things he was thinking about. After a short while, her cheeks puffed up again and her eyes squinted. She looked like a young girl. Another month passed. Jinrenli is here? Let's invite him in. Rinpochen pushed aside the official documents on his desk and stretched himself. There were too many matters to attend to in the imperial court, big and small, and it was truly too much for him to handle. It made him want to throw them all away and go sailing by himself. Not long after, they saw the otherworldly woman dressed in Taoist robes. She was still as beautiful as ever, but she gave off a feeling that she was not tainted by the mortal world at all. It was as if she was floating in the air and would be gone with the wind at any time. "Immortal Li, how have you been?" Rinpochen stood up with a smile and took a few steps forward. The distance between them was only a few feet. He didn't know why, but he always wanted to shake hands with her to see if she was really untainted by dust. With this thought in mind, Rinpochen really stretched out his hand. "Zhao Prince Consort." She looked at his right hand, which was still stained with ink, with a tinge of doubt in her eyes. "It's a courtesy, a handshake to show that both parties are friendly." Rinpochen insisted on not withdrawing his hand. Seeing that she didn't respond, he reached out and grabbed her hand. He didn't feel too touched by her ice skin and jade bones, but he was finally satisfied when he saw the ink stains on her fingers. She couldn't help but smile. Seeing an immortal-like person like Jinrenli always makes me want to pull him back into the mortal world. Rinpochen laughed heartily and took a step back. He saw that Lin Yu, who was beside him, seemed to be lost in her thoughts again. "Mr. Lin." Rinpochen called out tentatively. Although she wasn't very smart, she was still a top-notch expert, and calling her Mr. was a form of respect. It wasn't good to call her Madam or Mississippi. After half a minute, Lin Yu dragged her voice and said in a daze, "Ah, it's Prince Consort. You still haven't recovered?" Rinpochen asked. It had been more than 10 years, but Lin Yu's strength hadn't changed at all, and the situation where she was dozens of beats slower hadn't improved at all. "I'm 2 seconds faster than before." She nodded slightly. Rinpochen calculated in his mind. That meant that she had improved from 32 seconds to 30 seconds, right? She was still dial up the internet. "Is the world of Great Xia still stable?" Rinpochen asked casually. She nodded gently. In fact, when had the world ever been stable? However, the top group of people had left, and the remaining people were just small fries. In particular, how could it be possible to hide the fact that the organization had incorporated those top-notch experts? They didn't even think of hiding it. Almost everyone knew that there was an extremely powerful secret organization in the dark. Moreover, there hadn't been any news of those experts for so many years, and many people were guessing whether they were still alive. As a result, conspiracy theories were prevalent, and many people were much more cautious. "You've worked hard," Rinpoche said. "How's the situation over there?" Li Yuanzhu asked. In fact, she was the one who should have gone to the Wall of the Two Worlds. With her talent, she was far superior to the Empress. However, in order to suppress the world, she stayed in Great Xia. It could be said that Rinpoche felt a little guilty towards her. He immediately told her everything he knew about the Wall of the Two Worlds, the foreign races, and the situation. In fact, it wasn't much. Even now, everyone knew very little about the foreign races. The Grey Thorn race, which wasn't far from where the Empress and the others were hiding, was a weak race and knew very little about the outside world. After all, the Wall of the Two Worlds was a remote place. Even the Chingu race didn't know much about it and only heard a little from the caravans. "There's not much time left." Li Yuanzhu's expression changed slightly. If they touched those two foreign tribes, the foreign races would probably react very soon. "There's not much time left." Rinpoche sighed. He only hoped to delay as much as possible. He then relaxed and smiled. "However, it's not like we didn't gain anything." After saying that, he picked up a bottle from the table and took out a level 4 origin crystal from it. Wisps of vitality immediately emanated from it. "Is this the origin crystal that the prince mentioned?" Li Yuanzhu took it and carefully sensed it. "It's indeed a good thing. If we had discovered it earlier, we wouldn't have had to worry so much." "Hey, it's a good thing." Lin Yu grabbed the origin crystal in a flash. She held it tightly in her hand and refused to let go. Rinpoche smiled and shook his head. He asked someone to bring 15 level 4 crystals and 5 level 3 crystals to Li Yuanzhu. "I hope you can break through as soon as possible," Rinpoche said. He then talked about other matters. The martial arts conference was easy to arrange. Even though those experts had left, their disciples still remained in Great Xia. These people included the majority of the elites in the Jianghu of Great Xia. In addition, they also had good friends. Most of the young elites' friends were of a similar level. In this way, they wouldn't lose too many friends. One more thing. Mirror Moon Deity and Swift Thunder Hands are dead. If their descendants are willing, they can move to Dayo. Most of the martial arts techniques in the martial arts hall can be opened to them. If they are unwilling, I can make the decision to send them 50 level 5 origin crystals every year. If they have any difficulties, they can also contact the rearguard commandery. Mirror Moon Deity and Swift Thunder Hands were the two experts who died during the destruction of the Chingu race. Li Yuanzhu felt it was a pity that the death of these elites was one less. However, she still said, "In that case, I will thank the prince on their behalf. It's what I should do." Rinpoche waved his hand. No matter why these people joined, they were fighting for the human race and eventually lost their lives. He had to take care of them so that those experts wouldn't have to worry about them. After talking about this, Rinpoche said, "There's another important matter that I need your help with." "Is it to study the spirit and heaven-grade weapons?" Li Yuanzhu already knew a little before coming. Many experts have gained some insights over the years. "I don't know if it will be of any help. Just 2 of you will be enough." Rinpoche smiled. The insights of many experts were mostly personal experiences. Although Rinpoche needed them, he didn't value them too much. He valued the research subjects more so that he could conduct systematic analysis and research. Chapter 1178. How are you, Miss Li? You are incomparably beautiful. I hope that our cooperation will be pleasant. I need to know some of your body data and what your heaven-grade weapon is. What can you do with your spirit when you're not using it? We need to observe some changes when you exchange your energy. We also need you to cooperate with us in some experiments. Body data? Observation? Li Yuanzhu was stunned when she arrived at the research institute and found out what she was going to do. Even with her calmness, there was some anger in her eyes. He would never have thought that he was actually here to be experimented on. The big-nosed man in front of her didn't notice her anger and kept saying things like instruments, experiments, and observations, which made her feel bad. If it were someone else, they would have flown into a rage. However, Li Yuanzhu was much calmer than others. She knew that this research was very important, so she didn't flare up. She turned to look at Lin Yu, who was scared out of her wits, and laughed bitterly. Oh? You didn't flare up? Rinpoche smiled when he heard this. Li Yuanzhu had a good sense of the overall situation, but this was also the reason that restrained her. As long as it was for the human race, she would endure even if it was a little offensive or difficult. Of course she couldn't go overboard. Rinpoche had already confirmed that, from a certain point of view, such people were easy to bully. It was true. As long as it was from a righteous point of view, most people wouldn't refuse. Rinpoche liked this kind of person. From a certain point of view, this kind of person was much easier to deal with than the Empress. This was true for most people, but in terms of his personal position, the Empress was better. To most people, the Empress was good and evil. Most of the time, she acted according to her own preferences, but she was very tolerant of people she liked. She was a typical person who would help her relatives and not reason. Even if Li Yuanzhu had someone she liked, if it conflicted with her righteousness, she would probably cut off her feelings. This was also the difference between the two top women in the world. Furthermore, the research was only to observe her exchange of energy, blood flow, and condense her heaven-grade weapon. It wouldn't be too offensive to her. Therefore Rinpoche wasn't worried. After getting everyone to leave, Rinpoche calculated the Empress's schedule and figured that she should be back soon. The 60,000 mountains were vast, but if the Empress returned alone, she could travel directly through the air, which would be extremely fast. Just as he expected, news of the Empress's appearance in Aching Valley came back the next day. It really wasn't easy to find a place in the 60,000 mountains. Otherwise, the Empress would have arrived 10 days ago. This was after discovering the plane in the sky and following the direction for a few days before finding it. Aching Valley was not big. It was just an outpost. The most important things were the airport and a few warehouses. The Empress, who was dressed in red, appeared. She looked around and headed straight for the warehouse. Moments later, all the people guarding Aching Valley were shocked. After the Empress chased everyone away, she carried 2 bottles of wine out of the warehouse. After downing a bottle of wine, she let out a satisfied sigh of relief. Her face was full of satisfaction. He then used the radio to send a message to Rinpoche: "Prepare the wine pool for me. I want to see it when I return." Upon hearing the Empress's cold voice, a smile appeared on Rinpoche's face. "As you wish." He immediately returned to Earth and tried his best to bring back more than 1,000 caddies of ergoto. Long ago he had imposed a ban on alcohol, especially on the use of grain to brew wine. As for fruit wine, he turned a blind eye to it. After all, it couldn't be completely banned. For example, Air Hua's base camp, Shanhui restaurant, and several brothels in the city all had alcohol. 3 days later, the Empress boarded a plane that shook like a tractor as it rose into the sky. She rested her chin on one hand and sat by the window. She wasn't really affected by the turbulence. She looked at the huge beasts roaring in the forest in the distance and pondered whether she should get someone to clean up the surroundings. Previously, this route had been cleared. The beasts in the 60,000 mountains all had a sense of territory. After the powerful beasts in an area were cleared, other beasts would migrate over after a period of time. As a result, they had to be cleaned up from time to time. It seemed like there was no end to them. Because of this, more than half of the troops from the Protectorate of the South were involved. Before the plane reached a high altitude, there was a small accident. An iron-winged rock barged into the flight path of the plane and seemed to treat it as a toy. It chased after it for a while and planned to pounce on it. The archers on the plane shot a few arrows at it but couldn't chase it away. The arrows bounced off the gray feathers on its body, which made the rock a little angry. It looked as if it was being harassed by a few flies. With a cruel look in its eyes, it kept following the plane from below. If it wasn't for the fact that the plane was flying at a higher altitude than it would have caught up in time. After another 3 days, Rinpoche returned to the harem after the court session. He tidied himself up and informed Air Hua that he would return to the palace after school before heading out of the city with the ministers. After waiting for 2 hours, the plane finally landed at the airport. The Empress was the first to jump down from the plane and saw Rinpoche opening his arms. The Empress hugged him and smelled that familiar scent. She then bit his shoulder hard and heard him groan in pain. She then raised her head and sneered, "I'll deal with you when I get back." Her ears were very sharp. When she turned around, she could still hear Rinpoche muttering, "Are you born in the year of the dog?" She almost turned around and gave him another bite. "Don't stand on ceremony." The Empress nodded slightly at everyone. During the days when she wasn't around, everyone had done a good job in assisting Rinpoche. She was quite satisfied. Let's talk after we get back to the palace, the Empress said faintly. Yes. Everyone stole glances at the Empress curiously. They didn't know what level the Empress was at now and could only feel that her aura was as unfathomable as the sea. There were a few limousines and various vehicles outside. Nowadays, Dayo didn't only have tractors and trucks. There were limousines and off-road vehicles, but they weren't officially released. Basically, Renbachien obtained them from the laboratory and gave them to everyone as a reward. These things looked precious, but they were all experimental models. Using them as a reward would be beneficial and not costly. This is not bad. The Empress sat in a limousine. When she saw Renbachien take out the iced fruit wine from the refrigerator, her eyes immediately lit up. Is my wine pool ready? Of course, how can I be careless with your Majesty's instructions? Renbachien hugged the Empress and received a long, suffocating kiss in response. Then she bit his lips so hard that he almost tore off a piece of skin. You are indeed born in the year of the dog. Renbachien was exasperated. This was why he couldn't beat her. I heard that you are addicted to the brothel and neglected to discipline Erhua? The Empress looked at him from the corner of her eyes. Who said that? I will beat him to death. Renbachien was so angry that he almost died. How could she slander him like that? Angry out of humiliation? You are really bold. The Empress laughed and made Renbachien panic. Angry out of humiliation? I have been working hard for several years. Even if I don't get any credit, I still put in a lot of effort. How dare someone slander me? Renbachien said angrily. Ah. The Empress laughed meaningfully. Chapter 1179. Queen Mother. Erhua was surprised to see the Empress in the palace. Although they were mother and daughter, they had not seen each other for many years and inevitably felt a little unfamiliar. The Empress left when Erhua was 4 or 5 years old and had been gone for 5 or 6 years. Although they occasionally contacted each other through the radio, this didn't change the unfamiliarity brought about by distance. The Empress looked at Erhua in a daze. She had grown up so quickly. That sense of unfamiliarity wasn't only felt by Erhua, but also by her. Erhua had grown up. When she left, she was only 7 or 8 years old, but she now looked like a slender and elegant young lady. She wore a long blue dress, looked like the Empress, had quick-witted eyes, and was a cardinal heaven expert. You've grown up. Come closer and let me take a look. The Empress looked relaxed and smiled. Queen Mother. Erhua called out again. You look good, the Empress said gently. Of course I'm doing well. It's just that I haven't seen you for a long time. Erhua was as honest as he could be. Let's talk while we eat. I want to hear about what happened to you all these years. The family of 3 sat in front of the hot pot and sighed. It had been a long time since they last had such a day. At the table, the Empress asked Erhua about her in detail, such as her school and studies. At first, Erhua was honest, but he soon reverted to his old ways and was straightforward. Queen Mother, let me toast to you. Let's have another toast, Queen Mother. Of course I'm very powerful. I'm a princess. Who dares to bully me? It's me who bullies others. I have a lot of friends who give me a lot of treasures. My favorite is a pair of fire sparrows. They have a nice chirp and can catch fire. Later I wanted to see if I could roast them. It's strange that they can catch fire but they can still be roasted. They taste pretty good but they're too small. I recently met a monk who is fun, drinks a lot, and has a good alcohol tolerance. He doesn't make a fuss after drinking too much, doesn't fight, and doesn't strip dance. He just cries at the slightest provocation. School isn't fun. There are too many courses but you can learn a lot. I've been very interested in revolutionary history recently. But it's different. Isn't that the fate of the Queen Mother? We're the biggest landlord. You'll beat me to death. Father doesn't go to brothels often, right? I can stay there for at most 5 days a week. At least there's a weekend. That's much better than me. Other people go to class 5 days a week, 7 days at most. I go to class 10 days a week. I've already broken the record in human history. Silence. Abrupt silence was the worst thing at the dining table. It was extremely awkward. Renbachien glanced at the Empress and saw that she was smiling coldly. Then he looked at Honeysuckle, his eyes rolling. This bastard did it on purpose. Speak properly. Renbachien gritted his teeth. How could that be? I was just saying. No, I was just a kid talking nonsense. Heh. The Empress curled her lips into a sneaky smile. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, capable of slicing people into pieces. The Empress didn't argue too much with Ren Baqian. After all, she had many information channels in the imperial court. Ren Baqian often went to brothels, but he only went there to drink. He didn't do anything else and behaved himself after drinking. Usually he was too busy going to the brothel to listen to music and drink, then going to the big bathing pool to take a bath and have a massage was considered his pastime. Naturally, the Empress wouldn't go overboard. Otherwise, before Honeysuckle could stab Rinpochen, she would hang him up and beat him up first. Rinpochen looked at the eye mark on the Empress's arm and clicked his tongue. God. He felt that this thing might be a powerful existence from the foreign races and was a little interested. From the sound of it, it seemed like a curse. It could actually form such a mark on the other party's body. He didn't know the specific effect, but no matter what it was, this mark definitely had a positioning function. It was just like marking a target on the head of a boss in a game so that his teammates would know to attack him together. Let's go back and give it a try. Rinpochen didn't know if this thing would disappear when he returned. Only God knew how this thing worked. With a twist of space, Rinpochen pulled the Empress and Honeysuckle back to Earth. Looking at the sky, it was early in the morning. The time is just right. You can go to school now. Rinpochen patted Honeysuckle's back with such strength that would have killed someone else. Let's see if it's still there. Rinpochen grabbed the Empress's arm and saw that the eye-like mark had disappeared. Sure enough, the mark was affected after being separated by a world. Rinpochen could almost hear the other party's voice saying, "The other party is not in the service area." In the Lansang territory, in a forest that wasn't considered dense, countless beasts were frantically fleeing. The ground was shaking and the trees were swaying. It could be felt even from hundreds of kilometers away. 5 gigantic beasts of disaster that were as huge as mountains were constantly moving forward. Tall trees that were 20 to 30 meters tall were like straws in front of them and couldn't stop them at all. They were smashed, crushed, or deeply embedded in the soil. Wherever the 5 beasts passed, there was only a mess left. Behind the 5 ferocious beasts was a team of ferocious beasts and earth spirits that was far away. In the sky, dozens of flying beasts were circling above. They either swooped down or grabbed their fleeing prey. An earth spirit wearing a crown and a string of jewel-like ornaments sat on the head of a giant beast of disaster and rubbed a black crystal in his hand. It's been 5 days and there's still no response from this road sign. Where is the enemy marked by God? Is he dead or? He felt that the latter was the most likely. No one could hide from God's gaze. However, he didn't tell them immediately. Instead, he kept moving forward along the original route. This wasn't very useful since the road sign only pointed in one direction and wouldn't change unless it was within 500 kilometers. He didn't know if the other party was originally 500 kilometers or 10,000 kilometers away. Let's wait for another 2 days. If there's still no response, we can confirm that the other party is dead. Imperial Prince Su, there's a tribe of the four-eyed race 50 kilometers away. A huge winged flying snake landed on the same level as the Calamity Beast's head. The Earth Spirit clan members on the ground immediately knew about it. Let them prepare food or let them become food themselves. The Earth Spirit called Imperial Prince Su instructed. The four-eyed race was considered one of the stronger races among the weaker races. However, the Earth Spirit clan was considered above average even among the middle-level clans. In addition, the Earth Spirit clan had a god, which elevated the status of the Earth Spirit clan. It was only second to the 36 powerful clans and the strongest clans among the middle-level clans. As for treating the weaker races as food, it wasn't a big deal in his eyes. The Earth Spirit wasn't picky about food. A day later, near the ruins of the four-eyed race's tribe, Imperial Prince Su was about to give the order to return when he suddenly discovered that the road sign was reacting and trembling slightly. Chapter 1180. It's still here. It seems like this thing isn't so easy to deal with. Rinpochen frowned slightly when he saw the pattern reappear on the Empress's arm. If it's still here, it's better for your Majesty to keep it in the palace. Although it's fine now, it can't be useless. If it explodes one day, it won't be a small matter and may even endanger your Majesty's safety. It's not that troublesome. It's still effective, but it's a little weaker. The Empress was relatively calm. Rinpochen looked carefully and couldn't see which part was weaker. However, he still trusted the Empress's words. In this case, we'll travel to the 2 places more often and see what happens. That's right. The Empress nodded and changed the topic. Where's my wine pool? The Empress had always been obsessed with the legendary wine pool and carnal pleasures. If an emperor didn't have a wine pool and carnal pleasures, he would be embarrassed to say that he had done it before. It's already been prepared for your majesty. Rinpoche smiled. I'll get someone to pour the wine in. 2 hours later, the two of them arrived at a hall. In the hall there was a pool that was 20 meters long and wide. It was half filled with liquid. As soon as they entered the hall, a strong aroma of wine rushed into their nostrils and could intoxicate them. A wine pool. The empress's face was full of joy. There should be trees planted next to the pool, candy trees. The empress pointed to the surroundings of the pool. Good. Humph, I don't know what they did to actually block the sight of the gods. But so what? After all, how can humans compare to the gods? Imperial Prince Su noticed the movement of the road sign and sneered. Let's go. Let them suffer the wrath of the black sky god. 3 days later, the road sign didn't respond again. The road sign responded again. The road sign didn't respond again. The road sign responded again. The road sign didn't respond again. The road sign again. Imperial Prince Su's hair stood on end. For more than a month, he was always on the verge of a violent rage. The team had been moving in the direction indicated, but what made him furious was that the road sign seemed to be getting harder and harder to track. Until one day the road sign couldn't find the other party's position. This made Imperial Prince Su's eyes hazy. There was no doubt that the other party was still alive. However, he didn't know how they did it. They actually blocked the sight of the gods and even the gods couldn't find them. Give up? Absolutely not. The other party's blasphemy towards the black sky god had to be cleansed with blood. But to continue? Who knew if the other party was thousands of miles away or tens of thousands of miles away? It was impossible for them to kill everyone along the way. Looks like it will disappear after one more time. Rinpoche rolled up the empress's sleeve and looked at the faint mark. If he didn't know what it originally looked like, he wouldn't be able to tell. All that was left was a faint outline. He didn't expect that such a mark could be worn away by traveling back and forth through space. It was reasonable but unexpected. At the very least, he knew another additional function of traveling through space. Yes, I'll be leaving after it's gone, the Empress replied. It's a bit urgent. Time doesn't wait for me. Although the crystals were effective, they were more useful to the warriors of Great Xia. They were more suitable for them to meditate and exchange elemental energy with their divine souls. To be of use to the aboriginals, I need to stay in a space with dense yuan qi for a long period of time. I can't always stay in a quiet room. The Empress shook her head. I also want to see what it's like on the first heaven after I break through the longevity heaven. According to the message left by the Emperor is the level of strength in the longevity heaven realm. Those foreign race masters must be at this level as well. Only by reaching this level can we know how powerful they are. Your Majesty, how long will it take to reach that level? Rinpoche couldn't help but ask. The Empress could be said to be favored by heaven and earth, and her talent was unparalleled. She was a cardinal heaven expert at the age of 20 and broke through to the intermediate level of longevity heaven when she was just over 30. Now, she had already reached the advanced level and could be considered the #1 human in the world. This kind of talent had never been recorded in the thousands of years of history. Thousands of years ago, when the human race was still in the Lansang region, there weren't many people who could compare to the Empress. Moreover, the Empress had the hack machine to level up. However, without the help of predecessors, Rinpoche wasn't sure how long it would take for the Empress to take that step. On one hand he was looking forward to it, but on the other hand he was a little worried, which was why he asked this question. After the Empress took that step, the future should be much safer. I will definitely take that step within 10 years. The Empress said resolutely. Good. Rinpoche smiled. 10 years. He didn't know how many more years she could drag on. The most important thing now was to drag on. The longer she dragged on, the more advantageous it would be for the human race. If she dragged on until the human race got out of the warship, even if there were dozens or hundreds of foreign race masters, they could just directly attack them. The Empress returned for more than a month before leaving. She left in a hurry and didn't even explore the existence in the belly of Mount Luchui. It was a race against time now. Huh. There's news of cheese eating? Rinpoche was a little surprised. Most of the time, he had forgotten that he had such a brother-in-law. He had been looking for traces of the late emperor for more than 10 years, and even Honeysuckle was almost 11 years old. A door? Rinpoche was a little surprised. Yes, it's said to be a door with a layer of water on it. We can't see what's on the other side of the door. More than 10 people went in and no one came back from the other side. We don't know what's on the other side of the door. the radio reported. Ren Bachin walked around the ground a few times. There were too many strange things in this world, such as the thousands of races in the Lansang land, the red moon in the sky, and now another door. It didn't seem too surprising. What about Qi Ziding? He also went in, and there were 3 cardinal heaven experts. Pass down the order that no one is allowed to go in again. Be on guard outside, and I will send someone later, Ren Bachin immediately ordered. Yes, but those people might not listen. The other party said hesitantly. Ren Bachin knew who he was talking about. Qi Ziding was accompanied by a group of ancient race cardinal heaven experts that he had recruited. There were more than 20 of them. If these people wanted to go in, they couldn't be stopped. If they want to die, don't stop them. If they haven't gone in by the time my people arrive, it means that they don't dare to go in. What else is there to say? Ren Bachin said coldly. Understood. If anyone returns or there are any movements, send a message back immediately. Ren Bachin turned off the radio and pondered for a moment. Although this was what he said, Qi Ziding had disappeared after reaching the other side of the door. He still had to send someone to suppress them. However, where did that door lead to? It would be great if there were satellites now. By throwing a probe at the other side of the door, the satellites would naturally be able to receive the signal and know the specific situation. Now that the wall of the 2 worlds was the focus, he wouldn't tell the Empress about this matter so that she wouldn't worry. Ren Bachin made up his mind. He didn't care whether Qi Ziding and the others were dead or alive. He only cared about the impact of this matter and where that door led to. Chapter 1181. Horn Dragon Galaxy, 4-leaf grass planet. There were several large cities on this planet that had a population of more than 1 million. Thunder Light City was one of them. When the sun rose and was still hanging in the sky, the people in the city had already started their daily lives. What's that in the sky? What is it? Someone cried out in alarm. As if it was contagious, most people on the street looked up at the sky. Then, this contagious action spread from one street to another until it covered half of the city. Countless thunder barbarians looked up at the object that was reflecting a metallic luster in the sky. It's so noisy outside. What happened? A deep voice was heard from the palace in Thunder Light City. King, there's something in the sky, a female thunder barbarian said with a surprised expression. In the sky? Something? The deep voice was heard again. I'm sorry, King. The female apologized at first, then explained, there's something floating in the sky. It's at least a few thousand meters high. I can still see it clearly, so it should be very big. It looks like a metal plate. If the people on Earth heard this, they would probably laugh for a long time. The spaceship stopped right above Thunder Light City, so it looked like a metal plate from below. It could be considered a different world version of the blind trying to figure out an elephant. Oh. The owner of the deep voice finally appeared. It was a tall thunder barbarian who was more than 2.5 meters tall. There was a diamond-shaped scale on his forehead that had a weak electric light jumping on it. At that moment, 8,000 meters in the sky. Those natives must be shocked. Oh mother, I see God. A white pilot looked at the aliens on the screen and laughed. Although his tone wasn't pleasant, the people around him didn't object to it. This was a sense of superiority and pride from a higher civilization. At least Earth was a civilization that had walked out of the planet. When faced with such an ignorant and backward civilization, it was natural for them to have such a mentality. Of course, the premise was that their powerful individual combat power was ignored. If both parties were on the same plane, no one would doubt that they would be rubbed against the ground by those 2 horned aliens. This was the conclusion that came from observing their battles and individual combat over the past few years. It's out. The one with the strongest energy reaction. Let me see. The entire observation room was filled with the sound of people inhaling. The screen clearly displayed the opponent's vitality, 112336. An average adult's vitality was only around 10, and a well-trained elite soldier's vitality was only around 30. 112336 was equivalent to the vitality of 7,000 ordinary people. It could be considered a self-propelled battleship. If Ren Bachin were here, he would have a better understanding of the other party's blood and chi value. One had to know that the blood chi of an Earth Embryo Realm expert was between 1,000 to 1,200. Most Spirit Wheel experts had a blood chi value of less than 3,000, and Cardinal Heaven experts only had a blood chi value of around 5,000. According to this growth curve, the experts of the Heaven and Earth domain would not have more than 10,000 blood chi. Martial artists who had just entered the longevity heaven only had a blood chi value of less than 20,000. The further one went, the greater the difference in physical strength between the ancient race martial art practitioners and the spirit refinement martial art practitioners. But his opponent had directly raised it to 6 digits. This was a qualitative difference. This number was simply terrifying. When are we going to send someone down to communicate with them? Someone asked, swallowing a mouthful of saliva. It was a man in a military uniform. Give them some time to think. After 24 hours, send a spaceship and a robot down. Have you finished analyzing their language? Another man asked. Yes, we have already put in surveillance equipment a year ago. After the analysis of 2 linguists and the photon computer, they can now communicate with each other. Then there's no problem. None of the foreign races below tried to shoot down the spaceship with long-range weapons such as arrows. The foreign race individual with the highest blood chi value stood outside for only a few minutes before returning to the largest building in the city. The building was shrouded in a kind of energy. Only the blood and chi value could be detected, but the specific value couldn't be detected. After 24 hours, the sun in this world was just past noon. After 24 hours, the Thunder Barbarians in the city below were still looking up at the steel plate in the sky from time to time as if they were afraid that it would fall. A small plane flew out of the spaceship. It was 10 meters long and 7 meters wide. It looked more like a diamond-shaped box in all 8 directions. The biggest feature of this Shuttle 17 was that it had a nozzle at the bottom and 4 small propellers at the top. It didn't need a runway to take off and land. It was more appropriate to call it an aircraft. When the plane first flew out, it didn't attract much attention. As the plane descended, the foreign races in the city immediately became restless. Look, there's something flying over. What is it? It doesn't look like a beast. Is there someone on it? In the palace. King, there's something flying down from the iron plate. And? That dull voice only responded faintly. What should we do? Wait, let's see what it is. For any race, an alien visitor was something that required imagination. The more backward a race was, the less understanding a race had of outer space, the more it was like this. King, that thing stopped. It stopped 100 meters above the rain platform. This time, before the dull voice replied, an electronic voice with a strange tone came from outside the palace. King of the Thunder Barbarians, I'm an envoy from a foreign land. We came here to communicate with you. I don't know if you're willing to. The reason why it was strange was that the last 2 words of the Thunder Barbarians were extremely forceful, like steel, so when they spoke they gave people a feeling that they were very imposing. However, this electronic voice was in line with the habits of the Earthlings, so the voice sounded a little weak. That thing spoke? The female Thunder Barbarian in the palace was shocked. After the electronic voice said it once, it repeated itself. After a few seconds of silence, the dull voice laughed. Ha, interesting. I haven't encountered such an interesting thing in a long time. Okay, don't just stand there, let our guests in. The rain platform was a 3-story platform outside the palace. Each floor was 3 meters high. At this time, several guards were looking at the sky near the rain platform with lightning surging in their eyes. It wasn't until the female Thunder Barbarian came out and said a few words that the guards stood aside. Come down, the king invites you in. The female Thunder Barbarian said to the sky. Everyone was surprised to see the plane land on the side. The side opened, and a woman who was similar to the Thunder Barbarian walked out. She had no horns, no lightning in her body, and no blood could be felt from her. That's right, it was a female robot. Under normal circumstances, it was easier for the other party to be on guard against a female. Especially according to the observation on Earth, the aesthetic standards of the Thunder Barbarian tribe were quite similar to those on Earth. This robot was made based on the aesthetic standards of the Thunder Barbarian tribe. What are you? The female Thunder Barbarian raised her eyebrows and looked at the robot in front of her. She could clearly feel that the other party was not a living thing. It's not very polite to say that. The robot pursed her lips and smiled, saluting with the etiquette of the Thunder Barbarian tribe. Come with me. She didn't feel any dangerous aura from the other party, so the female Thunder Barbarian directly invited it. As for checking the weapon, there was no such requirement at all. As the most powerful king of the Thunder Barbarian tribe, he naturally didn't care about this kind of thing. First, set a small goal such as 1 second. Remember, Bookhouse. Chapter 1182. We've entered the hall. The signal isn't affected. A joyful voice came from the spaceship. Apart from that, It was even quieter in the spaceship. Everyone was looking at the image on the screen trying to catch any sound. Other than the spaceship staff, there were linguists, sociologists, and negotiation experts. Earth had made a lot of preparations for this meeting. According to some people, it was the beginning of a new chapter in history. This was the first contact between humans and an extraterrestrial civilization. It could be said to be a historical event. No one would be careless. As the robot entered the hall, the residence of the civilization's ruler was finally reflected in the eyes of the people on Earth. In the eyes of many people, a lot of things could be determined from a person's residence. Although it was an alien, it was better than not having any clues. The hall was spacious and simple, with black and blue as the main colors. At the top was not a seat, but a cushion that looked like a futon. A tall figure was sitting there with his legs crossed. Other than that, there was the female Thunder Barbarian in front of him. Neither of them had luxurious decorations on them. They were even inferior to the Thunder Barbarians outside. However, the pressure from their bodies was far beyond any life form they had ever seen. Simple, determined, tough. This was the first impression of the people on Earth. "It's a pleasure to meet you, King of the Thunder Barbarians. I'm an emissary from Earth. You can call me Zero." The robot saluted. "Puppet? Something shameful. But I'm still willing to give you a chance to talk." The tall figure said, "Tell me first. What are you guys? Where is Earth? What's your purpose?" "You can call us humans just like how you call yourselves the Thunder Barbarians. In fact, we're all carbon-based life forms. Although there are slight differences in appearance, there's not much difference in essence. Earth is another planet outside this one. We crossed the distant starry sky to come here with the friendship of humans." "Friendship?" The tall figure let out a soft laugh. "Yes, friendship. The boundless starry sky is our goal. The starry sky is vast and most of the planets have no life. Discovering and coming here is a surprise for both our races." The robot's words were said after many experts had discussed them. They tried their best to be as pretentious as possible so that the other party would not look down on them. After all, Earth had already walked out of the planet. They still had some confidence in dealing with the native alien races. However, he couldn't brag too much, lest the other party would see through him in the future and feel that he had been deceived. Thus, he tried to make his words as complete as possible. This was also based on the situation of the Thunder Barbarians. From what he had learned, the people of this race believed in martial strength. Their physical strength was strong and their personalities were straightforward. They hated being lied to. Come. Then why are you looking for me?" "Naturally, it's to establish a connection between both sides. Did you discover this world by accident? Where is your world? What do you want? I hate having something on my head. Do you know why I didn't take it down?" The tall figure finished asking what he wanted to ask and suddenly changed the topic. "Shoot it down?" Many people on the spaceship laughed. Shooting down a spaceship from 10,000 meters in the sky with his bare hands? This joke is very funny. Primitive, barbaric, ignorant. Such labels were hung on the King of the Thunder Barbarians. "Because I want to see what will happen." The voice of the tall figure didn't change much, but it carried a hint of thunder that sounded like the silence before. The expressions of the sociologists on the spaceship changed slightly. Was this the rhythm of a sudden change in attitude? Peaceful communication is built on powerful strength. There's a saying that goes, "Reading can make me talk to idiots calmly, and fists can make idiots talk to me calmly." Maybe we should show our strength. This kind of primitive, backward race can't understand the greatness and power of technology. They have too little knowledge, so they believe in the pressure of fists more. "I don't think he'll be so unwise, right?" someone said. After all, communication between both sides was extremely beneficial to both sides. Honestly speaking, who would reject communication from another planet? If it was him, he would definitely not reject it. He believed that no one would be able to reject it. For a civilization that could walk out of a planet, even a little bit of technology would be enough for them to upgrade for several generations. Most people agreed with this statement. If it was Earth in their shoes, their first concern would be how to further communicate with the other party, exchanging technology, materials, minerals, and so on. They would find a way to get technology from the other party that could allow their civilization to transition. Secondly, they would want to get something that could allow their technology to advance, or something that could allow them to live a better life. Even if the other party didn't know much, as the king of a race, he wouldn't be too short-sighted, right? "Maybe you're very powerful, but for us who can travel through space, your strength is still at the level of a living creature," the robot said. "Hee hee ha ha ha." The tall figure suddenly laughed in a low voice. I've said it before, I hate things above my head, not even birds. And I also hate people who are sneaky and don't even dare to show their faces. If you come and greet me honestly, maybe I'll spend more time talking to you." The people on the spaceship who heard this had a strange expression. Greet him honestly? It was like a primitive man who was being pointed at by a gun and roaring, "You should just greet me honestly." However, the next moment, everyone couldn't laugh anymore. The tall figure didn't make any movements, but an electric current suddenly flowed into the robot's body. In a short moment, all the electronic parts were destroyed, and the screen on the spaceship went black. Although it's exquisite, a puppet is a puppet. The tall figure didn't even look at the robot and flashed out of the hall. Suddenly, a bow completely made of lightning appeared in his hand. "Is he trying to shoot us down?" Someone sneered. Everyone's face was a little angry. They didn't expect that they would fail to make contact with the king of a primitive race. The other party was simply unreasonable. The gap between the two parties was obvious, but the other party actually dared to do this? If it was someone else, even if they had some ideas, they would probably feign civility first, right? As expected, we should learn our lesson this time. Next time we should show our strength first and let them know who's boss. There's a high-energy reaction below, there's a high-energy reaction below. The spaceship's alarm suddenly sounded. However, everyone wasn't too worried. After all, this was a spaceship that could travel through space at an altitude of 10,000 meters. What everyone was more interested in was the bow in the other party's hand that was made of pure lightning. "Scan it and see how the bow is made. We might have discovered a big secret," someone said excitedly. Everyone subconsciously felt that this bow made of lightning was some kind of special mineral. If they could excavate it, it might be of great use. A purple ray of light streaked across half the sky. "Make sure to observe and record," someone else said. However, the next moment, the ray of light hit the spaceship and instantly broke through the outer shell of the spaceship. The powerful electric current instantly destroyed all the instruments on the spaceship. Even the people in the spaceship died in an instant. Looking at the falling spaceship, the tall figure wrapped in lightning suddenly leaped up. He first lifted the spaceship up a few inches, then smashed through the bottom armor of the spaceship. Boom. After all, it was a spaceship that was traveling through space. Its defense was excellent, and with this cushion the spaceship didn't suffer too much damage. "King." Seeing the tall figure walk out from a hole on the side of the spaceship, the surrounding people cheered. "King." The female thunder barbarian walked to the side. The tall figure nodded slightly. "Find the best craftsmen and scholars in the city and see if they can research anything." Then he sneered. "Weak rabbits actually want to be on equal footing with me? Do they think that just because they can fly, I can't do anything to them? How does the king know that they are weak? They don't even dare to show their faces. Why would the strong need to use such dishonest methods? But if they attack en masse, if they could attack en masse, it wouldn't be just one spaceship that came today. It wasn't easy for them to come here. Moreover, they were able to shoot down their spaceship so easily, which confirmed this point. They are just weak people with some strange skills. Chapter 1183. I have something to say. I thought that there was nothing that crossed the line in this book. However, I was reported by someone and met with a crackdown. I first 404 before reviewing it. I don't know if it was a certain reader or a certain author who reported me. I blocked a lot of haters and even retaliated. I understand that some people hate me. In Dragon Sky, I also scolded some people who didn't know anything and just blindly spouted nonsense. It's natural for people to hate me. I don't know who did it, so I'll say it all at once. Maybe they thought that they had won and thought that they could make the authors they didn't like unhappy. In fact, it only created an environment in which everyone in the online literature industry felt insecure. In the end, they didn't dare to write anything. I really don't know what the current online literature industry will look like. I can be sure that readers who like to read will not like to see this. As for some authors, they aren't that hateful, but they are quite pitiful. They can't do anything else and their minds aren't on the right path. They can only be disgusting like this. Anyway, I haven't seen any successful authors who report this or that every day. In the online literature industry, only strength is looked at and nothing else. If you want to produce results, you have to write your own book well. Even if you drag others down, you won't be able to come up. That's all. Recently, I've been writing other things for fun. I didn't have any manuscripts. I thought that it would take a few more days before I could release them. After I finished writing, I would go and update my novel. Chapter 1184. Thunder Barbarian King? The spaceship was shot down? Let me watch the video first. Rinpoche was surprised to hear the news. This time the news came back very quickly. It had only been 10 days in Dayo and 1 month on Earth. After all, when they first came into contact, the 3 spaceships in the Horn Dragon Star sector maintained constant communication. Everything that happened from start to end was clearly seen by the other 2 spaceships. Okay, just remember not to spread it. Yang Sen's face, which was getting rounder by the day, looked like a greasy middle-aged man, but was actually an old man, was floating in the air. With a smile on his face, he circulated the news internally and left it to Yang Sen to contact Rinpoche. After all, in this aspect, Yang Sen's vision was higher than everyone else's. He was an expert among experts. After witnessing the strength of the aliens, Rinpoche's status in the system was raised by a plus sign. His wife, the Empress who killed without batting an eye but was so beautiful that she made people speechless, was raised by 3 plus signs. Rinpoche shrank back and said, "Stay away from the camera, at least show the upper half of your body." Half of his body was more comfortable than a head floating in the air. Furthermore, this head was too big. Okay. The greasy head of the Messier 87 department, Yang Sen, shrank back and immediately became half of his body. Rinpoche opened the video sent by Yang Sen and even recorded the words of the pilot as if there was a voiceover. "Ha, those natives must be shocked. Oh mother, I saw God." The flamboyant voice in the voiceover didn't surprise Rinpoche too much. This should be how a high-level civilization faced a low-level civilization. A long-lost scene flashed across his mind. Thinking back to when he transmigrated with a bowl of noodles and was almost beheaded, he felt a wave of sourness in his heart and almost cried. However, when he saw the blood and chi value of 112336, Rinpoche's face turned solemn. He knew what the blood and chi value of the Empress was. 35,000. The Empress was at the intermediate level of longevity heaven and had been training outside the wall of 2 worlds for almost 3 years. Now she was close to the advanced level of longevity heaven and only had a blood and chi value of 35,000. The other party's blood and chi value was 3 times that of the Empress's. Judging from the growth curve of his vitality value, he was probably no longer at the peak of the longevity heaven. At the very least, he had already taken a step there. Since the human emperor was dead, his body had been refined into a strange existence. All of his blood essence had shrunk into a ball near his heart, making it impossible to measure his vitality. Therefore, it was difficult for him to estimate the strength of those who had reached that level. However, Thunder Barbaric King's strength had already caused his heart to tighten. However, judging from the growth curve, he had at most 1 foot taken that step. In that case, how powerful would an existence who had truly reached that level be? As he thought about it, he watched the video and listened to everything that happened next with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Yang Sen didn't rush Rinpoche. Instead, he brewed a cup of wolfberry tea suitable for his age at the other end of the screen. Even though Rinpoche was already aware of this matter, he was still somewhat fearful of the might of this arrow and remained silent for a long time. "What do you think? What do you think?" Yang Sen finally opened his mouth after a long time. "You can't evaluate these Thunder Barbaric Kings with the thinking of Earthlings." Rinpoche pointed out the first problem. "Rather than looking for those sociologists, you might as well look for 2 ruffians from a backward region. They know better than anyone that the fist is the boss. If you don't show your strength, it's useless no matter what you say. Not everyone cares about the exchange of benefits, let alone the alien races." After staying in Dayo for so many years, he knew this way of thinking too well. As the king of a race, Thunder Barbaric King was inhumanly powerful, had a higher opinion of himself, was more stubborn and was harder to convince. Similarly, they valued martial strength more. Rinpoche could almost understand the other party's thinking. If they needed anything, they could just snatch it. Otherwise, they would work hard to train and strive to cross the starry sky with their body. They might not necessarily understand the dangers of the starry sky or the vacuum. In their opinion, since they could come over, they could go over. As long as their body was as strong as steel. Rinpoche dared to say that after the spacecraft crashed, the other party would definitely test the strength of the steel. In his opinion, it was just that he hadn't flown high enough. "We didn't expect the other party to be so direct. We also considered what you said and came up with a variety of plans. However, the other party's reaction was still beyond our expectations. But it's still human thinking. Ren Baqin ended this topic with one sentence. What's the height? 13,000 meters. There was no obvious weakening before hitting the spacecraft. The other party's arrow can reach at least a distance of more than 20,000 meters. Ren Baqin was in a bad mood at this point. The stronger the other party is, the more powerful the enemy will be. Unless the distance is pulled to a safe enough position, even a spacecraft isn't a match for him, Ren Baqin pointed out. A spacecraft that could fly in space was powerful in some aspects, but it was weak in terms of combat power. What about a nuclear bomb? The premise is that you can hit him. A powerful existence that has reached this level is extremely sensitive to danger and has a very strong body. This includes laser weapons. Without a certain density, it's very difficult to hit the other party. Naturally, they can't cause damage or even cause fatal damage. I don't recommend you to be enemies with him now, Ren Baqin sighed. In fact, he hoped that Earth and the other party would fight to the death. Only in this way would Earth rack their brains to create more powerful weapons. War was one of the driving forces for the advancement of weapons and technology. This was also very beneficial to him. However, he couldn't say that. He is already looking for our traces. Although we are separated by a continent, after he finishes searching the area occupied by the Thunder Barbarians, he might send people to search further away. Yang Xin knew a lot of things which surprised Ren Baqin. As the head of the Messier 87 department, he actually knew so much. What are the plans of the higher-ups now? Ren Baqin suddenly asked. Yang Sun came to ask Ren Baqin because he wanted to get some information from Ren Baqin's opinion. As for the specific plans, it wasn't something that Ren Baqin could control. How would I know about such things? Yang Sun laughed directly. I don't recommend making a second contact with the other party or immediately becoming enemies with him. I suggest that we seize the opportunity to develop weapons that can injure and kill such a powerful individual, Ren Baqin said directly. Do you have any other opinions? For example, what level of strength can this person reach? Yang Sun asked. The value of blood and qi was just a number, and they needed to have a more intuitive understanding. The other party should have the ability to walk in the air at a height of no less than 2,000 meters, Ren Baqin judged based on the Empress's situation. Anything else? Do you think I'm a god? What can I see with just these few things? Ren Baqin spread his hands and asked. Yang Sen's greasy old face was starting to look a little unpleasant to the eye. He really didn't know too many things. Even the Empress hadn't reached this stage, so how much could he know? Furthermore, he wasn't in a good mood. The strength of these foreign races was indeed terrifying. In addition, I suggest that you don't try to use nuclear bombs. Although it can destroy a large number of ordinary Thunder Barbarians, it's very difficult to kill such an existence. After that, it will attract the most intense counterattack from the other party. I don't think that an ocean can stop such an existence. Moreover, there isn't just one such existence on planet Four-Leaf Grass. There are at least 3 of them. There are only 3 spaceships on Earth now. Oh, there are only 2 left. What can we do? Let's build the spaceships first. Only when there are enough spaceships will we have the capital to think about other things. By the way, their power of thunder and lightning should be related to their thunder pool. You guys better pay attention. Chapter 1185. Although he was concerned about the follow-up of the four-leaf clover planet, he knew that there wouldn't be any results in a short period of time. The 2 small spaceships would not be able to do anything to the other party. Just like what he said, at most, he would throw a few nuclear bombs down to flatten the capital and kill countless Thunder Barbarians. Then, the Thunder Barbarian King would be injured but not killed, and he would retaliate crazily. As for the possibility of Thunder Barbaric King taking a nuclear bomb head-on, if this really happened, he might really consider smearing the nuclear bombs with honey and packing them in a gift box as a gift to the foreign race's heavenly lords. After returning to Dayo, 3 months passed in a flash. The 3 ironclad ships that Chao Zhong was on had also crossed the Qin nation and ventured thousands of miles into the 60,000 mountains. They had also built a stronghold to serve as a supply depot. Now they were preparing for the next exploration. It was estimated that it would take at least 3 months. There were still some fishermen coming and going along the coastline near the Chuyan Mansion and the Qin nation. If they found a guide, they could avoid a lot of danger. However, no one had ever set foot in the 60,000 mountains before. At that time, it would be up to them to explore it bit by bit. The date of the martial arts contest had been set. It would be held in 3 months. Those under the age of 24 would be divided into two groups, 15 to 19 years old and 20 to 24 years old. The purpose of the contest was to select martial arts geniuses with potential. For this reason, a special group had been set up to serve the martial arts competition. The person in charge was an expert from the Temple of Heaven. The venue is set outside Wang capital city. There are a total of 5 arenas, 3 of which are the main arenas and will be used in rotation. The construction of the arenas will increase the number of steel bars, and the concrete will have a strength of 80. Rinpoche looked at the blueprint of the arena in his hand and listened to Tu Hong, the head of the Ministry of Works, who was newly established in the Ministry of Works. Speaking of which, Rinpoche and Tu Hong had a grudge against each other. Back then the two of them had sparred several times. However, the current Tu Hong was much more well-behaved. Let's do it this way. Report the expenses and withdraw them from the Ministry of Revenue. Rinpoche immediately approved it. However, the next day the naive, stingy, miserly and seemingly menopausal Tu Wan directly said in the imperial court, "The Ministry of Revenue doesn't have any money left. The salary for 3 months has just been distributed, and the rest has been spent on the 60,000 mountains and the Wall of Two Realms. If you don't believe me, you can go to the National Treasury and rummage through it. Even a mouse will be crying when it goes in." Even if Tu Hong was her biological brother, there was no way he could ask for money. Rinpoche was silent for a while before saying in a relaxed manner, "This isn't difficult. We can pay the 6th knitting factory a sum of money to advertise during the entire competition. Also, ask the big families in the Yun Nation if they want to advertise at the competition." Advertisement? Let's advertise it to the public. It's the section that introduces the products on the Black Bamboo Academy's newspaper. After hearing Rinpoche's explanation, everyone immediately understood. Is this useful? Of course. But the 6th knitting factory produces underwear and sports vests, right? Tractors and trucks are understandable, but what's the point of advertising these things? Rinpoche had a smile on his face. It's just underwear and a knitted vest. Don't you always tear your clothes when you fight? Especially after you use weapons, it's rather unsightly. The 6th knitting factory has developed a kind of cotton woven with green spider silk. It's quite tough and not easy to damage, so it's not exposed during a fight. Everyone was stunned. Thinking about it, this thing did seem to be useful. Men were easy to deal with. At worst, they could just raise their swords and fight, but women seemed to be more concerned about this aspect. This was especially true for the warriors from the Yun Nation and Great Xia. Rinpoche smiled in his heart. Putting aside the group of big shots in the court who would get drunk and start running around naked, the warriors still cared about their reputation. If it was a battle of life and death, they wouldn't care so much. However, in the arena, who would be willing to expose themselves in a battle of weapons? The advertising fee from the 6th knitting factory was definitely worth it. As for the chambers of commerce and families from the Yun Nation, they weren't without foresight. Those who sold weapons and medicine also had a demand for this. After the morning court session, Rinpoche stayed in the laboratory for the entire afternoon to check on the progress of various projects. He returned to the palace in the evening. "Where's the princess?" Rinpoche asked as soon as he returned. "In Fengyang Palace Hall." Xinji's bespectacled face, which was expressionless most of the time except during electric shocks, looked a little strange. What happened? Rinpoche might not have noticed if there was something wrong with other people's expressions. However, it was too obvious on Xinji's face. "Li Yuanzhu, Lin Yu and Xing Rua are also there," Xinji said in a cold voice. "How did they get together?" Rinpoche was slightly stunned. "Go on patrol. I'll go take a look." After giving some instructions, Rinpoche walked toward Fengyang Palace Hall. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he heard the sound of a zither coming from the main hall. Rinpoche was even more surprised. Erhua rarely looked for musicians in the palace. In addition, the identities of the other 3 people made Rinpoche even more curious about what they were doing. However, when he walked to the front of the hall, he vaguely heard a song coming from inside. The melody was a little familiar. "We met again at a wedding banquet." A beautiful woman was at the side, the candlelight swayed red. The lights were twinkling, reflecting a pair of picturesque faces. Like a gentle old dream on a cardamom branch. "I don't know the opposite party." Suddenly my thoughts churned. "I see your clothes are still white, but your expression is a little cold." The voice was like the cry of a phoenix, extremely melodious and lingered in the air. People couldn't help but stop in their tracks to avoid disturbing the person who was singing. It sounds familiar, Rinpoche thought to himself. He slowed down and took a few steps forward before he could see the situation in the hall clearly. He saw that the woman who was sitting with her eyes squinted and whose voice was like the sound of nature was actually Lin Yu. Li Yuanzhu was sitting cross-legged behind her and playing the zither. Not far from her was Hua, who was sitting behind a drum. The song gradually stopped, but the mournful sound of the flute continued. Rinpoche's expression also became strange. The scene in front of him was something that he had never expected. The world's top expert, the ethereal Li Yuanzhu, Lin Yu, the troublemaker Hua, and the superficial monk Xing Rua were actually singing together? Not to mention their strength, they couldn't possibly go together with their identities. Li Yuanzhu and Lin Yu should be doing research in the laboratory, right? Rinpoche suddenly remembered that he didn't see them in the laboratory in the afternoon. He didn't pay much attention to it at first since he needed to rest while being researched. He didn't expect them to be together. The song was very familiar, but he couldn't remember the name as it had been a long time ago. Your Highness is here. Li Yuanzhu looked up and greeted him with a smile. Arhat. Xing Rua held a bone flute in one hand and put his palms together with the other. He was dressed in white and looked rather ethereal. Lin Yu was still squinting and disconnected from the internet. Hua jumped up from behind the drum and shouted, Father! What's going on? Rinpoche was puzzled. Father, we have formed a band. Sister Lin Yu is the lead singer. Her singing is good, right? Sister Li is the zither player, I'm the drummer, and Monk Xing Rua is the bone flute and harmonizer. Hua's expression was written all over his face. I'm amazing, right? I'm amazing, right? Why aren't you praising me? If you don't praise me, I'll beat your chest with my little fists. Band? Rinpoche was a little confused. These people were going to form a band together? This didn't seem right. Yes. We are going to form a rock band, but we are still getting used to it. Isn't Sister Lin Yu singing nice? We will definitely be popular. Hua said cheerfully. Li Yuanzhu nodded slightly and smiled. Lin Yu continued to disconnect from the internet. Xing Rua smiled without saying anything and muttered, Amitba. Rinpoche looked at the four of them, then at them again and then again. He had a stomach full of complaints but didn't know where to start. A Taoist nun, a monk, a princess, a mysterious internet expert and a rock band. How did these dozens of words come together? Also, the previous chapter was about studying extraterrestrial experts. How did this chapter jump to a rock band? After a while, Rinpoche suddenly slapped his thigh and looked at Li Yuanzhu with a strange expression. He remembered the name of this song. A Taoist nun friend of mine, do you know the name of this song, Jinrenli? Post air, share. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.